Chapter 1185. The illusion disappeared, and everything collapsed as if it had never existed. The scene suddenly changed, and Tang Zheng returned to the 6th floor of Langya Pavilion. The 6th floor was empty as far as the eye could see. There were no Dharma treasures, no secret manuals, and not even a piece of furniture. He was greatly disappointed. Could it be that the illusion and the old man were everything on the 6th floor? What was the meaning of the 6th floor? And it had to be set up on the 6th floor. What would happen if other people met the old man? Would the old man also explain the history of the dragon clan's rise and fall? Would he also instill great responsibility in the people who came? Tang Zheng shook his head. He did not know the answer. Perhaps only the 5-clawed golden dragon knew the answer. Since there was no answer on the 6th floor, he would go to the 7th floor. Tang Zheng walked to the 7th floor, but found that the scene in front of him changed drastically when he reached the stairs. Langya Pavilion disappeared, and he returned to the real world. What's going on? It shouldn't be time yet, right? There was a time limit for entering Langya Pavilion every time, but Tang Zheng felt that not much time had passed this time. Why was he forced to leave? You've been in Langya Pavilion for a long time, how could it not be time yet? The 5-clawed golden dragon's voice sounded, and said with some ridicule, you should be going to the 6th floor of Langya Pavilion this time. How do you know? You can't sense the passage of time. Only the 6th floor has this illusion. Why? Because you're wandering in the illusion of space, so naturally you can't clearly feel the passage of time. Hearing this, Tang Zheng came to a realization. It seemed that the 5-clawed golden dragon was very clear about the situation on the 6th floor. He could not help but ask indignantly, since you knew earlier, why didn't you tell me? Didn't the Dizang of Goguryeo say that life depends on experience? The most important thing in life is experience. If I tell you everything, what do you have to look forward to? Only by experiencing it will your life be more complete. Hearing his righteous answer, Tang Zheng was speechless. His heart moved, and he said, but you lied to me. When did I lie to you? The 5-clawed golden dragon's voice was a little strange. He asked even though he already knew the answer. Tang Zheng coldly snorted and said, you hid it very well. If I hadn't met that old man when I entered the 6th floor, and if he hadn't answered my questions, then I definitely wouldn't have known that you actually dug a hole for me, and almost got me killed. I don't know what you're talking about. The 5-clawed golden dragon's tone was obviously a little panicked. Tang Zheng had already confirmed this point, so he didn't give him the slightest chance to quibble. He straightforwardly said, tell me, to what realm can a human cultivate the dragon god arts to? Ah! The 5-clawed golden dragon cried out in alarm, but immediately covered it up and said, didn't you just cultivate? Don't you know? Of course I know. I'm just asking you. Are you feeling guilty and afraid to answer? Tang Zheng asked jokingly, come out and tell me clearly face to face. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, the lifelike tattoo on his arm lit up. The 5-clawed golden dragon soared into the air in the golden light, turning into a small golden dragon that circled in the air. Tang Zheng looked at the other party with a burning gaze and asked, answer me. The 5-clawed golden dragon's eyes kept changing, obviously thinking of a response. Under Tang Zheng's blazing gaze, the 5-clawed golden dragon was defeated. In the end, he lowered his head and said resentfully, you already know that other races can only cultivate to the 5th stage of the dragon god arts. You finally confessed. Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. But you're not an ordinary person at all. You've already cultivated to the 7th stage, which is a situation that has never happened before. It's equivalent to me teaching you the dragon god arts is correct. It's of great help to you, isn't it? The 5-clawed golden dragon tried his best to fight for credit for himself. You clearly have bad intentions, yet you're still looking for excuses for yourself. I've already seen through you. Don't you find this kind of sophistry boring? Tang Zheng did not retreat in the slightest and argued back. The 5-clawed golden dragon's eyes revealed a look of disappointment. He never thought that his little trick would bring about such a big hidden danger. If he had known earlier, he would not have played this kind of trick. The most important thing was that he never thought that he would fall into Tang Zheng's hands. He even had his soul branded by him, so he was unable to resist at all. The five-clawed golden dragon was speechless. After a long silence, he asked resentfully, "Then what do you want? Do you want to use your soul brand to make me suffer again?" A cold light flashed in Tang Zheng's eyes, but it gradually disappeared as he stared hatefully at the five-clawed golden dragon. He took a deep breath and said, "If I had known before, I definitely would not have let you go. Now that you've pledged allegiance to me, we're one. So, I'll forgive you this time. But if you persist in going about things the wrong way and let me see you play tricks again in the future, humph, you've experienced the taste of the soul brand, so you should be very clear about what it feels like." Tang Zheng's words were very deterrent, causing the five-clawed golden dragon's heartstrings to tremble. The fearless five-clawed golden dragon actually grew more and more in awe of Tang Zheng, and did not dare to go against him again. Tang Zheng was almost tricked by the five-clawed golden dragon. Of course, he was angry, but he did not lose his mind. After calming down, he understood that if he were to fly into a rage and punish the five-clawed golden dragon, it would definitely make the five-clawed golden dragon afraid, but it would also give birth to a rebellious heart. What Tang Zheng needed was the five-clawed golden dragon's loyalty, and not simply fear him. Using the carrot and stick was the most effective way. The five-clawed golden dragon revealed a look of surprise. It seemed that he did not expect Tang Zheng to let him go so easily. For a moment, he was at a loss. Everything can be done once, but not twice. This is your only chance, Tang Zheng solemnly warned. The five-clawed golden dragon resentfully nodded, hesitated for a moment, and said, "How do you know about the dragon god's secret art? Who told you?" "Huh?" Tang Zheng stared at the five-clawed golden dragon in surprise, and said, "Why is your question so redundant? Of course someone told me. Aren't you in the Langya Pavilion? Who else would tell you?" The five-clawed golden dragon was puzzled. "Can't there be people in the Langya Pavilion?" "Of course not." Tang Zheng's eyes widened, and asked, "Is there not a white-haired old man in the 6th floor of the Langya Pavilion?" "Old man?" The five-clawed golden dragon stared straight at Tang Zheng, as if he was listening to a heavenly book. The five-clawed golden dragon's behavior did not seem to be acting, which made Tang Zheng very confused. That old man was very realistic, and the other dragons were not blind, how could they not see him? He suppressed the doubts in his heart, and asked curiously, "Let me ask you, what exactly will the dragon clan encounter on the 6th floor?" The 6th floor allows us to learn the history of the dragon clan, just like how you humans watch movies. A simple illusion allows us to wander through the history of the dragon clan. Ever since the dragon clan encountered the dragon slayer and left their homeland, the illusion emphasized this humiliating history. Did you see it? The five-clawed golden dragon said with emotion. Tang Zheng nodded, suddenly enlightened, so the 6th floor was ideological education, unifying the dragon clan's ideology. This was very similar to Hua Xia's situation. No wonder Hua Xia always claimed that she was the descendant of the dragon clan. Perhaps she had learned it from the dragon clan. The old man said that the dragon clan would only truly enter the dragon clan after cultivating to the 6th level, with great magical powers. This was the elite of the dragon clan. If they did not unify their ideology, then wouldn't it be a plate of loose sand? The design of this Langya pavilion really had great wisdom, it was worthy of respect. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a while, and said, "Of course I saw it, what about the rest?" "That's all." "What about the old man?" "No." The five-clawed golden dragon finally gave a definite answer. "How could there be no?" Tang Zheng was baffled. There was clearly an old man who explained the history of the dragon clan to me. "You are the dragon clan, how could you not have met him?" The five-clawed golden dragon's reaction was even greater than Tang Zheng's, its huge eyeballs almost popped out. From Tang Zheng's reaction, the five-clawed golden dragon was sure that he was not lying, which meant that he really met an old man on the 6th floor of the Langya pavilion. This was completely illogical. "What did the old man tell you?" He told me that only the dragon clan can cultivate to the 6th level and above, and that they can cultivate the dragon soul. Once the dragon soul is cultivated, many of the dragon clan's divine abilities can be mastered. Tang Zheng gave a general introduction, but did not mention the ancestral divine abilities. This would make the 5-clawed golden dragon panic. Although the 5-clawed golden dragon had pledged allegiance to him, it had always been arrogant and did not really put Tang Zheng in its eyes. If it knew that Tang Zheng had cultivated the ancestral divine abilities, its eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. Tang Zheng did not want to show off in front of the 5-clawed golden dragon, nor did he need to use this to show his authority. The 5-clawed golden dragon's expression dimmed. Sure enough, someone had revealed this to him. It thought that it could hide it for a lifetime. It seemed that it was too optimistic. The 5-clawed golden dragon racked its brains, but still could not figure out who this nameless old man was. Only the dragon clan could enter the Langya pavilion, which meant that this old man must be a senior of the dragon clan. But why did he choose Tang Zheng? Could it be that there were so many other dragon clans that could not enter his eyes? This made the 5-clawed golden dragon puzzled and somewhat depressed. From this point, it could be inferred that it was actually far inferior to Tang Zheng, especially in the heart of the senior of the dragon clan. It was not as important as Tang Zheng. The deep sense of defeat made the 5-clawed golden dragon depressed, and its mood could not calm down for a long time. Looking at the 5-clawed golden dragon's reaction, Tang Zheng understood what it was thinking, but he did not comfort it, and said to himself, "Could it be that with your identity as a dragon, you can't understand the mystery?" The 5-clawed golden dragon weakly rolled its eyes and said embarrassedly, "If I could understand it, I wouldn't be so distressed." Tang Zheng secretly sighed. He originally hoped that the 5-clawed golden dragon would answer his questions, but he did not expect that it would bring him even more questions. Who was this mysterious old man, and why did he choose him? Confused, Tang Zheng fell into a dilemma. Don't worry, this should be a good thing. After all, no one else has this opportunity. The 5-clawed golden dragon said sourly. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Are you envious?" "I'm not envious." The 5-clawed golden dragon said insincerely. The 5-clawed golden dragon thought highly of himself, but in fact, he was an ordinary member of the dragon clan. This time, seeing that Tang Zheng was so valued, there was no doubt that he was envious and jealous, but he was unwilling to show it. Otherwise, its pride would completely crumble. Chapter 1186. But you have to wait until next month to go. The 5-clawed golden dragon said. He could only go to Langya Pavilion once a month, and there was a time limit each time. This made Tang Zheng helpless. "There's no need to wait for you. I'll go to the 6th floor of Langya Pavilion to find out." The 5-clawed golden dragon volunteered, trying to save a good impression. Tang Zheng was overjoyed and said, "Then go quickly and come back quickly." He also wanted to find out if the dragon clan could see the old man. The 5-clawed golden dragon closed his eyes, and his consciousness entered the dragon seal. The room instantly quieted down. Tang Zheng looked at him expectantly, and time passed by little by little. Finally, the 5-clawed golden dragon opened his eyes. Golden light flowed, and his expression was very strange. "How was it?" Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask. The 5-clawed golden dragon shook his head disappointedly. "No, I only saw an illusion. There was no old man like you said." After that, the 5-clawed golden dragon looked at Tang Zheng with a strange expression. He searched for a long time in the illusion, but there was no clue. He only saw the history of the dragon clan's rise and fall, and the cruel slaughter of the dragon slayer. "Then I can only go to Langya Pavilion after I go down." Tang Zheng shrugged helplessly. "Don't you want to know what's on the 7th floor of Langya Pavilion?" "I'll tell you." The 5-clawed golden dragon said. "No need." Tang Zheng hesitated and shook his head to refuse. Previously, he was still very eager to know what the 7th level was, but after experiencing this incident, his desire had faded a lot. Just as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had said, the unknown meant experience, and this kind of experience was rare and valuable. Being able to predict the future was not necessarily a good thing. The five-clawed golden dragon was surprised by his change, but he still didn't say anything. Come back. Tang Zheng stretched out his arm. The five-clawed golden dragon shook his head and wagged his tail. With a flash of light, he disappeared from Tang Zheng's arm. At the same time, above the ninth heaven, a ripple spread out. The air was quickly torn apart, and a dark space door appeared. A person walked out of the crack and squinted his eyes, curiously looking at the land under the nine heavens. If Tang Zheng saw this person, he would definitely shout out in surprise. This person was actually the dragon slayer that he saw in the illusion of Langya Pavilion, who had killed the six-clawed golden dragon. The dragon slayer had actually passed through the spatial gate and arrived in this world. Tang Zheng had thought that it was impossible for the other party to come to this world so quickly. It seemed that his wishful thinking had completely failed. This world is interesting. It's so different from the other worlds. He stood proudly as the wind blew against his face, causing his clothes to flutter. He looked down at the ground beneath his feet, especially the tall buildings above him. He couldn't help but frown. This world was completely different from the world he had seen before. It seemed to have a different aura, especially those tall buildings that he had never seen before. He was not afraid. Instead, his interest was piqued. He had been chasing after the dragon clan for who knew how many years, and there was nothing to write home about. This time, he finally saw something different. Naturally, he was especially happy. I hope this world won't disappoint me. He muttered to himself, his arrogance evident. He slowly closed his eyes, and the shadows of his hands changed. Seals fell from the sky and disappeared into the vast earth. Immediately, a figure appeared in his mind. The figure of a fix-clawed golden dragon was faintly discernible. Ah, this world is so shabby. There's only one fix-clawed golden dragon. It's my time. He sighed, seeming rather discouraged. However, passing through the spatial gate consumes too much energy. I can only pass through the spatial gate once now. I have to absorb a dragon's soul to go to other worlds, so I can only continue to stay in this world. He seemed to be very reluctant. Looking at the faintly discernible fix-clawed golden dragon in his mind, he frowned as if he was very disgusted. This fix-clawed golden dragon's appearance was no different from the one on Tang Zheng's arm. It was just that its figure was more blurred. Where is this fix-clawed golden dragon? Little golden dragon, stop hiding. You can't escape my fiery golden eyes. He continued to cast spells, trying to track the whereabouts of the fix-clawed golden dragon. Although I can sense its existence, there seems to be some kind of power blocking the connection between me and it. Strange, I've never encountered such a situation before. I've absorbed a dragon's soul. Although my sensing power is weaker than that of the dragon clan, it shouldn't be so blurred. His brows furrowed even tighter, like two scimitars hanging on his forehead. It made people shudder. He used all his skills to try to track the whereabouts of the fix-clawed golden dragon again, but in the end, it was to no avail. However, he immediately found another suspicious point. A blurred figure appeared in his mind, but it quickly disappeared without a trace. He was dumbfounded, unable to speak for a long time. There must be a problem. He had never encountered such a situation before, and this kind of difficulty had instead aroused his fighting spirit. He continued to cast the spell, and the figure appeared again. However, more than 10 seconds later, before the figure could fully condense, it dissipated again, like drops of starlight, drifting in all directions. Phew! He let out a long breath, and bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. It was not easy for him to cast this kind of magical power continuously, because it consumed a lot of his mind and power. He did not dare to continue. He also knew that there must be something fishy, but he was still unable to understand the mystery. This world is not as simple as I thought. TSK, interesting. Otherwise, how could a little golden dragon arouse my interest? This figure that has not fully condensed is the real target. I'm afraid it's not an ordinary dragon clan. If I can catch it, it might be able to raise my power to another level. His eyes gradually bloomed with light. He looked down at the world below, and his eyes revealed a strong sense of greed. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and he swooped down to the ground, disappearing into the vast building. In the secret military base on the outskirts of the capital, 100,000 soldiers were observing the celestial chess formation day and night. Ever since Ji Wuxiang found out that time was pressing, he accelerated the training progress. Now, 5,000 of the 100,000 elite soldiers had died. The other 5,000 soldiers had died in the training. Practicing the celestial chess consumed a lot of one's energy and physical strength, especially after Ji Wuxiang increased the training intensity. This was even more obvious. Ji Wuxiang did not care about the loss of these lives. Some people wanted to resist, but in the end, they were all suppressed by Ji Wuxiang. No one dared to resist him anymore. They could only train hard without any complaints or regrets. Ji Wuxiang stood on the high platform. Wherever his finger pointed, thousands of soldiers and horses were under his command. A surge of star power soared into the sky, causing a drastic change in the 9 heavens. In broad daylight, stars appeared in the sky. However, the starlight was very weak and far away. Humans on the ground could not see it. This surge of star power was like a huge protective shield. It quickly spread out in all directions from the capital. It was almost comparable to the speed of light. In a short while, this protective shield covered the vast Huaxia. Ji Wuxiang looked up at the sky. Although he could not see anything, he could communicate with the celestial chess and could clearly feel the star power. Naturally, he could also sense those specks of starlight. His eyes revealed a look of joy. He was so excited that he spoke incoherently. The celestial chess has finally succeeded. Granny Li, who had been by his side the whole time, was overjoyed when she heard his words. She hurriedly congratulated him. "Congratulations, Lord. Now that heavenly chess has succeeded, the whole world will be under your control." Ji Wuxiang looked at Granny Li with a smile and said, "The day of our glory will come." Granny Li nodded like she was pounding garlic and said, "Yes, glory will belong to us. Whether it's Tang Zheng or the demon race, they will be far from being Lord's match." Ji Wuxiang did not comment, but still reminded, "But we cannot underestimate them. Although the celestial chess has succeeded, it is not the time to use it." Granny Li asked in surprise, "Why?" Ji Wuxiang smiled mysteriously. With a thought, the protective shield covering Huaxia disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. The celestial chess is the key to victory. If we act too hastily and expose ourselves too early, it may not be a good thing. What we are planning is a long-term plan. Since there are many enemies, we will let them kill each other first while we reap the benefits. It will be as easy as blowing off dust. Ji Wuxiang said confidently. Granny Li suddenly understood and gave a thumbs up in praise. "Lord is farsighted, this subordinate admires you." After saying that, her gaze turned to the tens of thousands of elite soldiers and said, "Then what about them?" These soldiers had gone through terrible training and had consumed a lot of their essence, energy, and spirit. It was impossible for them to go back to the battlefield. Many of their bodies had suffered irreversible and fatal injuries. Ji Wuxiang swept a glance at the soldiers, his eyes without the slightest fluctuation, and said indifferently, "The sacrifice they have made for the celestial chess is worth it, because the humans of this world will remember their great achievements." Granny Li nodded seriously, "Yes, Lord's words are reasonable. The celestial chess has been integrated into every inch of Huaxia's land. As long as I have a thought, I can activate the celestial chess. There is no need for these soldiers to practice, so they have completed their historical mission." Ji Wuxiang said without stopping. This was a plan that Ji Wuxiang had long planned. After the successful practice of the celestial chess, when he activated the celestial chess, the traces of the celestial chess would be integrated into every inch of land, every blade of grass, and every tree. Ji Wuxiang had shut down the celestial chess in time, so much so that it did not cause much of a reaction in the world. It could almost escape the eyes of most people. Once the celestial chess was successfully activated, it did not need the soldiers to practice it again. It only needed a thought from Ji Wuxiang. This was the extraordinary part of the celestial chess. Even Tang Zheng did not know this, so Ji Wuxiang thought that he could easily hide it from Tang Zheng's eyes. In this world, other than him, only Tang Zheng understood the celestial chess the most. As long as he could guard against Tang Zheng, it was equivalent to guarding against everyone else. Let's go, there is no longer any value in this place. Ji Wuxiang turned and left, abandoning the tens of thousands of soldiers. Chapter 1187. Granny Li heard the hidden meaning in the man's words and couldn't help but frown. She stood up and asked, "What kind of status does the Great Lord have? Is he someone you can invite just because you want to?" The Great Lord didn't bat an eyelid and didn't stop Granny Li. In his mind, the bureau chief's value had already been exhausted. It was unnecessary for him to send someone to invite him. The Great Lord knew very well that the bureau chief's men had been monitoring their every move, but he didn't care at all and allowed them to report to him every day. Now that Heavenly Chess was a success, the other party also realized this and couldn't wait to take action. They appeared to be too impatient and ended up at a disadvantage. However, he didn't know that the bureau chief was also under great pressure to assign so many elite soldiers to train him. It was true that the bureau chief had a high position and power, but it didn't mean that he could do whatever he wanted. Countless pairs of eyes were watching him. If he made a mistake, they would kick him when he was down and kill him. Seeing that Heavenly Chess was a success, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. This was a return on his investment. According to Ji Wuxiang's description, Heavenly Chess was very powerful. Once Heavenly Chess was controlled, the world would be his chessboard, and everyone would be his chess pieces. The temptation of having the power to decide people's life and death was huge and strong. It was far from ordinary power. The bureau chief urgently needed to know more about Heavenly Chess. During this time, he had collected information from various places, as well as information from the soldiers who participated in the training, so he had a general understanding of Heavenly Chess. Although it was just a few words, the bureau chief could tell that Ji Wuxiang was telling the truth. Heavenly Chess was really as powerful as he said, even surpassing his description. This made the bureau chief wild with joy. The more powerful Heavenly Chess was, the more powerful he would be when it fell into his hands. He couldn't wait to enjoy the fruits of Heavenly Chess. Hearing Granny Li's question, the leader of the soldiers showed displeasure. His hard cheeks flashed with ruthlessness as he said murderously, "No one is allowed to disobey the bureau chief's orders." Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to speak here? Granny Li curled her lips and scolded disdainfully. The leader of the soldiers coldly glanced at the other soldiers and ordered, "Pass down the bureau chief's orders. Capture them and bring them to the bureau chief." Yes. The soldiers saluted in unison, their faces expressionless, as if they didn't put Granny Li and Ji Wuxiang in their eyes. Ha ha ha. Granny Li was stunned for a moment before she burst into laughter. This world was getting more and more interesting. A few soldiers actually dared to clamor with her. This was a blatant provocation. Were they tired of living? Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish. Ji Wuxiang did not laugh. Instead, he observed the soldiers thoughtfully. No one knew what he was thinking. Granny Li had always only trusted Ji Wuxiang, so she didn't put these soldiers in her eyes at all. She stepped forward and shouted with a murderous look, "Then you can all go to hell." He didn't use a weapon at all. He reached out his hand and grabbed the soldier closest to him. The soldier didn't retreat at all. Instead, he stomped on the ground and rushed forward as fast as lightning. Boom! With a muffled sound, the soldier's hand collided with Granny Li's. The huge force made Granny Li take 3 steps back before stopping, as if she had hit an iron wall. The soldier also retreated, and his arm broke, revealing a shiny object. A metallic luster. Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li's eyes narrowed at the same time. They stared at the metallic luster and finally saw what it was. The soldier's arm was not muscles, but a metal skeleton. The soldier was not a human, but a mechanical warrior. When did the chief cultivate so many mechanical warriors? The two were shocked and finally realized that they had underestimated the chief. They thought that he was not worth mentioning at all and had no trump cards in his hand, so they could only slaughter him. Now it seemed that they were wrong. However, Ji Wuxiang still didn't take it to heart. He didn't think that a few mechanical warriors could compete with them. Granny Li, end the battle quickly, Ji Wuxiang urged. Granny Li nodded heavily and accepted the order. Yes, Lord. Whoosh! Granny Li rushed out again, and this time she didn't take it lightly. She pointed the crutch in her hand, and a strong wind tore through the air and arrived at the soldier's chest in an instant. Bang! A big hole immediately appeared in the soldier's chest. Electric sparks flew in all directions, and a burst of smoke rose. Then, the soldier fell to the ground with a loud bang. Granny Li used her killing move and took care of a soldier at lightning speed. The other soldiers were expressionless as they rushed forward without any regard for their own safety. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The crutch swept through the air and hit the soldiers one after another. This time, the soldiers didn't fall. Although they were mechanical warriors, they also had intelligence and knew how to avoid harm. They were better at fighting and naturally avoided Granny Li's attack. They were mechanical warriors, and their brain was a sophisticated computer. Their eyes were like cameras, quickly analyzing Granny Li's attack and then responding accordingly. This happened in an instant. The two sides fought in a chaotic battle, and for a while, it was difficult to determine the winner. Granny Li's eyes were completely different. They became incomparably gloomy, and her heart sank to the bottom. She thought that victory was in her hands, but after this battle, she realized that the mechanical warriors were far more powerful than she had imagined. Now it seemed that she had been too whimsical. Ji Wuxiang stared at the soldiers with burning eyes. Finally, his eyes lit up and he said with sudden realization, I understand. These are the products of the combination of super soldiers and King Kong. Super soldiers and King Kong were the results of the Dragon Group's research. Super soldiers were based on humans, and through various medicines and other methods, they quickly grew stronger. In the end, they became the 4 heavenly kings at their peak. There were also several versions of King Kong, which were completely made by machines and used demonic beast cores to drive their powerful bodies. However, both super soldiers and King Kong had played a huge role in the previous battles. Later, they disappeared with the disbandment of the Dragon Group. No one would have thought that there would be an upgraded version of super soldiers and King Kong. The new version was a combination of these two powerful existences, and had more powerful abilities. Their appearance was no different from a real person, but they weren't living beings. Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but look at the bureau chief in a new light. He was indeed a dragon among men. It wasn't a coincidence that he had come to this point. His strategizing and shrewdness were difficult for ordinary people to reach. He had actually created such a powerful killing machine without batting an eyelid. Immediately, Ji Wuxiang's interest in the bureau chief was piqued. He originally didn't want to have any further contact with him, but it seemed that he had to change his plans. Granny Li knocked down 3 mechanical warriors, but the mechanical warriors weren't pushovers either. They left wounds on Granny Li's body. It seemed that the two sides wouldn't give up until a victor was decided. Suddenly, Ji Wuxiang roared, Stop! Don't you want us to go see your bureau chief? I'll go with you. I'm interested in meeting him. When the leader of the soldiers heard this, he immediately raised his hand. It was as if someone had pressed a switch on the soldiers. Their bodies stiffened and they immediately stopped attacking. Granny Li lowered her head and looked at the wounds on her body. She was very unwilling and wanted to take this opportunity to kill these soldiers. However, she didn't dare to disobey Ji Wuxiang's orders, so she had no choice but to resentfully stop attacking. Both sides stopped fighting. The air was silent, and there was a deathly stillness. Pairs of eyes stared at each other. It seemed that if there was any disagreement, they would start fighting again. The leader of the soldiers looked at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze and said, Let's go. Ji Wuxiang looked at the other party with a meaningful gaze. This person didn't make a move just now, so he didn't know his depth. These mechanical warriors weren't like martial artists or cultivators. There was no way to distinguish their cultivation and strength with the naked eye. Only when they fought with each other would they be able to tell. Lead the way. Ji Wuxiang wasn't afraid. He followed the soldiers and strode away. As for the tens of thousands of elite soldiers, they were still standing there in a daze, as if they had lost their souls. Granny Li caught up with Ji Wuxiang and angrily asked in a low voice, "My lord, why did you agree to their request?" Ji Wuxiang smiled mysteriously and said, "Don't you think these guys are interesting?" Granny Li's gaze swept over the soldiers and said disdainfully, "They're just a bunch of iron lumps." Ji Wuxiang laughed and said, "Don't underestimate them. Since the bureau chief dared to ask them to invite us, they must have made full preparations. Without a diamond drill, how could they dare to take on a porcelain job?" Granny Li was startled. She looked at the soldiers in disbelief and said, "Are they that powerful? Haven't you already tried?" Ji Wuxiang asked back. Granny Li's face stiffened and turned red. She said in shame, "This subordinate is incompetent. It's not that you're incompetent, but that we underestimated the power of technology. Technology is enough to change mankind, so we naturally shouldn't underestimate it. My thinking is too old-fashioned, and I've only just started to understand it now." Ji Wuxiang said ruefully. Granny Li's expression kept changing. She disagreed. How powerful could technology be? The government had been developing technology for so many years, but they were still suppressed by the Azure Dragon Palace. If it weren't for the appearance of cultivators, the Azure Dragon Palace would still be able to maintain this momentum, and they wouldn't have the opportunity to stir up trouble. Although Granny Li was powerful, she was still a step away from a true hero like Ji Wuxiang, and this wasn't without reason. Her vision was far inferior to Ji Wuxiang's. Ji Wuxiang didn't realize the power of technology before, but after seeing the mechanical warriors and recalling the development of the super soldiers and the adamantine mecha, he understood and had many ideas. He dared to face his mistakes, which was commendable. Ji Wuxiang also saw Granny Li's reaction, but he didn't explain. The corner of his mouth hooked up in a faint smile. The group arrived at a very secret place in the capital. After passing through layers of security, they arrived at a place similar to an underground fortress. A large electronic screen hung in the hall, showing the surveillance footage of various places in the capital. The focus was on the periphery of Tang Zheng's villa, with different images showing every angle. Chapter 1188. A familiar figure stood in the center of the fortress, calmly looking at Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li coming out of the elevator. His eyes were firm, as if he was very sure that Ji Wuxiang would come. Top Little said, separated by a few meters, the two people's eyes met in midair. Ji Wuxiang's eyes were slightly cold, and he was surprised. Of course, he knew that the bureau chief was hiding, and even his intelligence couldn't detect his whereabouts. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows, there was nothing strange about this. But what surprised Ji Wuxiang was the bureau chief's aura, which was completely different from before. Although it was also the aura of a superior before, there were many subtle differences. The bureau chief was more confident this time, and his superior aura was much more restrained, but the confidence that came from his bones couldn't be completely concealed. Ji Wuxiang's eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked at him with a burning gaze. The bureau chief stood in place and didn't move at all. When Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li came to stand in front of him, he said, "I heard that you were leaving. Fortunately, my people hurried over and finally found you in time. Otherwise, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to find you in this vast huaxia." Ji Wuxiang said without batting an eyelid, "Senior officer possesses supreme power and has hidden his abilities well. How could he not be able to track my whereabouts?" This was a test, but the bureau chief still accepted it and said non-committally, "Since you know, then you shouldn't leave in a hurry." Granny Li heard this and opened her eyes wide in displeasure. She said first, "Do you really think you're omnipotent? The bureau chief couldn't help but feel a little guilty when facing Granny Li, but now he had been promoted to a cultivator by Lu Wuxin, and his strength was strong, so he didn't put Granny Li in his eyes. The bureau chief looked at Granny Li in disdain and said, "You're just Ji Wuxiang's dog. Your master has spoken, what right do you have to talk nonsense?" These words made Granny Li fly into a rage, and Ji Wuxiang's eyebrows involuntarily twitched. He was very displeased. However, the bureau chief didn't seem to care about their feelings at all. He added, "In this world, unless it's the king's territory, there's nothing that can escape my eyes." Ji Wuxiang's eyebrows were raised high, and his strong displeasure was obvious. The bureau chief had changed so much that he was like a completely different person. Before he figured out the reason, he wasn't going to make a move. Being called a dog, Granny Li's anger had already leaped out of her head. It was difficult for her to suppress it, and she was ready to take action. The bureau chief could tell what she was thinking. He nonchalantly pointed at the surroundings of the underground fortress and said, "Do you want to make a move? Then do you have the confidence to walk out of here?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's movements subconsciously stopped. They were extremely uniform, as if they were all made by the same person. The underground fortress fell into a terrifying silence. It was very unsettling and depressing. Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li looked at these people at the same time. This unmoving situation made them feel an inexplicable pressure in their hearts. At the same time, a terrifying thought surfaced in their minds: could it be that these busy people are all mechanical warriors? There are at least a few hundred of them. When did mechanical warriors become mass-produced? How did they create so many people? No one could answer this question, but reality had already given them the best answer. These people didn't move at all. Their puppet-like reactions showed that they were mechanical warriors. This was the source of the bureau chief's confidence. In this enclosed underground fortress, Ji Wuxiang was very powerful, but he was also like an elephant. He could also be eaten by ants. There were enough mechanical warriors. Taking turns to fight Ji Wuxiang could also exhaust his strength. This was because machines didn't know fatigue. As long as they weren't fatally injured, they were like killing machines. They could attack endlessly until Ji Wuxiang was exhausted and died. Ji Wuxiang deeply felt the pressure. The current situation had exceeded his expectations. He originally thought that the bureau chief only had a few dozen mechanical warriors at most. That wouldn't be able to create any big waves and pose no fatal threat to him. However, the current situation made him realize that his thinking was too simple. He didn't know what method the bureau chief had used to mass-produce mechanical warriors. As for whether there was a mechanized army, that was still unknown. However, one thing was for sure. Since these hundreds of mechanical warriors had been created, it meant that the most crucial and thorny problem had been solved. It was only a matter of time before more mechanical armies were created. Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but reevaluate the bureau chief again. He had treated the bureau chief as a puppet many times, toying with him in the palm of his hand. He had never thought that the bureau chief would rise. The bureau chief had endured hardships to achieve what he had today. When the strong people threatened his position and life, he had thought of resisting and put it into practice. However, in the end, he didn't gain anything. Instead, he was put into a difficult situation and almost paid with his life. He almost couldn't recover from this setback. However, another secret plan he carried out succeeded. After the dragon group was disbanded, the bureau chief used all kinds of secret methods to inherit the assets left behind by the dragon group. Then, he started the research again. Countless scientists worked day and night, and finally, they succeeded. They didn't just manufacture super soldiers and King Kong mechas. Instead, they found that combining the advantages of the two, the mechanical warriors created were more powerful. The cost was relatively low, and they could be mass-produced. Currently, only a few hundred mechanical warriors were created. The results were excellent. Not only were the mechanical warriors' combat power off the charts, but their learning ability was also far superior to humans. Photographic memory was a piece of cake, and they only needed a short time to learn knowledge and skills. This underground fortress was specially made for the mechanical warriors. Other than the bureau chief, the others were all mechanical warriors. There were no other humans. The mechanical warriors could completely replace humans. Moreover, they were loyal to the bureau chief. No one could bewitch them. Therefore, the bureau chief was 100% assured. Even the insomnia he had for a long time couldn't be cured. Looking at Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li's reaction, the bureau chief was already sure that they knew that these people were mechanical warriors. The deterrence was obvious enough. His lips curled into an unfathomable smile of victory, and he said, "My lord, let's talk about your current thoughts." He looked like a winner showing off. That look made Granny Li want to rush up and give him a good punch. However, reason won over impulse. Things were different now. The bureau chief was no longer an official who could be bullied by others. He was a true powerhouse. Granny Li didn't dare. The Great Lord had just completed the celestial chess. How could the bureau chief have such an achievement? This was unfair. Ji Wuxiang restrained his expression and looked at the bureau chief without blinking, saying, "You really opened my eyes." The ancients always thought that Qin Shi Huang was the first emperor. However, it seems that this view will be overturned. Your achievements will surpass Qin Shi Huang. The bureau chief's heart was stirred. Ji Wuxiang actually compared Qin Shi Huang to him, and even said that his achievements would surpass Qin Shi Huang's. This praise was very useful to him. He didn't refute it. Instead, he asked, "Then what are you going to do?" Ji Wuxiang muttered to himself for a while, then asked, "What do you want?" "Hand over the celestial chess and tell me everything about it. In the future, you will have a part to play in my great undertaking. I am a person who distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. Naturally, I won't treat you unfairly," the bureau chief said without thinking. "You're delusional." Granny Li was the first to object. She thought that the bureau chief was simply crazy to make such an outrageous request. Did he really think that he had everything under control and was invincible? However, Ji Wuxiang didn't get angry immediately. He understood the bureau chief's thoughts. Anyone who had his achievements would have their confidence greatly inflated. It was expected that he would make such a request. The bureau chief didn't even look at Granny Li. He said lightly, "Granny Li, do you know why you are much older than Ji Wuxiang, but you don't have his achievements and can't sit on the throne of the Azure Dragon Hall's Great Lord? It's because your outlook and vision decided everything." After being ridiculed, Granny Li became even angrier. Her eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. Ji Wuxiang waved his hand slightly, indicating that Granny Li shouldn't be impulsive. He looked at the bureau chief and couldn't help but pat him, praising, "Brilliant, brilliant. This trip really wasn't in vain. I've seen another side of you, a side of you that's strong." These words exposed that Ji Wuxiang didn't see the bureau chief as a strong person in the past. Although he had a high position and power, he still couldn't enter Ji Wuxiang's eyes. The bureau chief also understood the deeper meaning of these words. He felt slightly bitter in his heart. In the past, he thought that he was the most powerful person in the world. It turned out that the other party didn't think highly of him at all. How laughable. That was already in the past. Now that he had become strong, that was enough. "Then what do you think?" the bureau chief asked. Ji Wuxiang's eyes changed. He looked straight at the bureau chief and said, "You really think you can defeat me? Then do you think there will be any changes?" The bureau chief looked around. The threat in his eyes couldn't be more intense. Ji Wuxiang's lips curled into a smile as he said meaningfully, "There are no absolutes in this world, especially when it comes to the unknown. You only know a little about the heavenly chess, yet you dare to have designs on it. Ha, I have to say that your arrogance is a little foolish." The word foolish irritated the bureau chief. His eyes turned cold, and he ordered loudly, "Take them down." Swoosh, 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 many figures moved as fast as lightning. Many of the mechanical warriors who were still working put down their work and attacked Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li without any regard for their own safety. The bureau chief quietly took a few steps back and left the encirclement. He looked at this scene with a smile in his eyes. Ji Wuxiang, did I really sacrifice so many elite soldiers to help you? You think too much of me. Don't you know what it means to be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind? The bureau chief's words pierced Ji Wuxiang's ears. Chapter 1189. The mechanical warriors charged forward as fast as lightning. Granny Li was about to step forward again, but she was stopped by Ji Wuxiang. With a shift of his mind, the grand matrix of celestial chess was abruptly activated without warning. No one was even aware of it. The chi activity in the bunker had undergone an earth-shattering change. The mechanical warriors couldn't sense the change in aura and didn't react at all. The bureau chief was a cultivator. He frowned and seemed to have sensed something. However, he didn't take it to heart and looked at Ji Wuxiang with determination. Bang, bang, bang. A series of muffled sounds rang out, and the mechanical warriors at the very front seemed to have come into contact with an invisible barrier. They were sent flying by the huge rebounding force, crashing into various instruments. Green smoke rose up, and electric sparks flew in all directions. The bureau chief's pupils shrank as he looked at Ji Wuxiang in shock. He didn't see how Ji Wuxiang counterattacked. Ji Wuxiang didn't seem to have moved at all, but he successfully repelled several people. Could it be, his speed was so fast that it could deceive the bureau chief's eyes? Unbelievable. Ji Wuxiang's movements weren't that fast. He didn't move at all. He activated the heavenly chess and used the power of the stars to counterattack the mechanical warriors. This was an invisible attack. The bureau chief and the mechanical warriors didn't notice anything. The mechanical warriors charged forward again without fear. Their attacks were even sharper. Ji Wuxiang's expression didn't change. He was calm and allowed the other party to charge forward. Granny Li was excited. She finally saw the power of the heavenly chess. She could tell that it was the great lord who had activated the heavenly chess. This made her blood boil. She looked at the enemy mockingly. Bang, 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 muffled sounds rang out. A few more people hit the invisible barrier and were sent flying. The bureau chief's eyes flashed. He finally realized something and exclaimed, "Is this the power of the heavenly chess?" He had already confirmed that Ji Wuxiang had not made any moves, so this was definitely the power of the celestial chess. Immediately, his thoughts became more and more lively. The power of the celestial chess had exceeded his expectations. If he took it for himself, wouldn't his strength increase even more? His eyes lit up as if he was staring at a delicious meal. He didn't even blink. Continue. Under the bureau chief's command, the mechanical warriors crawled up from the ground again and launched attacks without regard for their own safety. Ji Wuxiang didn't get annoyed, but he didn't use his ultimate move. Of course, he had the confidence to leave the underground fortress, but he didn't want to leave so pathetically. That would be letting the chief off too easily. He had already realized that the bureau chief was a huge threat, and even a huge threat from the government. With his own strength, it would not be an easy task to completely uproot them by the roots. That was because the technology to create these mechanical warriors was already fully developed. Even if he killed the bureau chief, this technology might not necessarily not be leaked out. Then, there would be another bureau chief, and there would be more and more of them, causing him to have no time to care. Therefore, Ji Wuxiang thought of a very good idea. However, in order to implement this method, he needed someone to cooperate with him. As for the person who cooperated with him, he knew very well that he would definitely follow the clues and find his way here. The only thing Ji Wuxiang had to do was to stall for time so that that person would have the time and opportunity to rush over. As for the clues, he had already given them. That was the celestial chess. Ji Wuxiang didn't hide the celestial chess anymore. Instead, he mightily activated the power of the stars. Above the 9 heavens, at the top of the firmament, starlight shone brightly. In broad daylight, there were already faint twinkling stars in the sky. However, to ordinary people, these twinkling stars were completely covered by the sunlight, and couldn't be seen at all. However, someone saw it. Tang Zheng stood in the courtyard, looking up at the sky. His eyes were slightly narrowed into slits, but the unreachable stars in the sky shone in his eyes. His heart was in turmoil, and he muttered to himself, "Power of the stars, could it be that the celestial chess has been activated again? Previously, I felt a little strange, and thought it was just my imagination. Now, it seems that it wasn't at all. The celestial chess has really reappeared in the world." The Empyrean fairy walked to his side and heard him muttering to himself. She asked curiously, "You said that the celestial chess has reappeared in the world. Wasn't the celestial chess already destroyed?" Tang Zheng nodded resentfully, saying, "Ji Wuxiang is extremely intelligent, he must have found other ways to perfect the celestial chess. He won't change no matter what, we must stop him." It was precisely because he understood the power of the celestial chess that Tang Zheng had no choice but to think of a way to stop Ji Wuxiang. The celestial chess falling into Ji Wuxiang's hands was definitely not a good thing, it might even bring disaster to this world. Absolute power would lead to absolute danger. If the celestial chess covered the entire world, then who would be Ji Wuxiang's opponent? Tang Zheng didn't want himself, nor did he want the people around him to become chess pieces on the chessboard. "Then do you have a way to find him?" The Empyrean fairy's expression turned cold, and she also became serious. Tang Zheng stared unblinkingly at the sky, saying, "Of course there is a way. It is easy for all things to leave behind traces, the celestial chess traces are the power of the stars." The Empyrean fairy nodded thoughtfully. She couldn't sense the power of the stars as clearly as Tang Zheng, but she understood what Tang Zheng meant. That was, if they followed the clues of the power of the stars, they would eventually find Ji Wuxiang. This way. Tang Zheng's gaze swept across the four directions, finally locking onto a direction. He leapt, moving like a fleeing rabbit, in an instant, only leaving behind an afterimage. The Empyrean fairy's speed was extremely fast, she caught up to Tang Zheng, walking side by side. The two of them moved as fast as lightning, passing through the streets and alleys. For ordinary people, it was just a gust of wind, they wouldn't even be able to see their shadows clearly. "This is the direction out of the city." Tang Zheng pointed ahead. The chess club was originally located in the bustling city of the capital. After the club was destroyed, Ji Wuxiang actually went out of the city. No wonder his men couldn't find him, he had hidden himself so well. "How much farther?" the Empyrean fairy asked. Tang Zheng felt the power of the stars growing stronger and stronger. This was enough to prove that they weren't far from their target. "Soon!" he roared and immediately increased his speed. The Empyrean fairy wasn't to be outdone. A continuous mountain range came into view. This was one of the mountain ranges in the suburbs of the capital. However, it had long since been turned into a restricted military zone. Usually, many troops would train here, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to approach. There was also a military airfield nearby. One could see many fighter jets parked there, and soldiers armed with live ammunition could be seen everywhere, constantly patrolling the military base. Even a fly wouldn't be able to sneak in without making a sound. Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks and looked at the base in astonishment. The power of the stars was coming from the base, and it was extremely strong. It was even stronger than the power of the stars that had been activated in the Go Club. There was no doubt that celestial chess was more complete than before. The Empyrean fairy looked at the base curiously and asked, "Is the target inside?" "Yes." "Then let's go in. Use your illusions. Otherwise, we won't be able to sneak in." The two of them immediately used their illusions and disappeared into the air. They swaggered into the base. Just as they stepped through the gate, the sentries looked ahead and didn't notice the two uninvited guests. Suddenly, an ear-piercing alarm was heard. The two of them were startled. They looked around blankly and found a group of soldiers with guns surrounding them. These soldiers were wearing sophisticated equipment that seemed to be able to see through their illusions. The two of them glanced at each other in shock. This tried and tested illusion had actually failed. These ordinary soldiers were actually able to discover their tracks. This was too illogical. Tang Zheng stared at the equipment on the soldiers' heads and said in a flash of inspiration, "Infrared thermal imaging devices." The Empyrean fairy was confused. She had never heard of this term before, but she knew that it was definitely some kind of technology. Tang Zheng's heart sank. It seemed that he had underestimated the power of the military and the use of technology. Although they had used their illusions to conceal themselves, they couldn't escape the infrared thermal imaging devices. This was because their bodies were still emitting heat and radiating energy, which could be detected by the devices. "What do we do?" the Empyrean fairy asked. "They're just ordinary soldiers. There's no need to take their lives." "Let's charge in," Tang Zheng said. The Empyrean fairy didn't say anything. She tapped the ground with the tips of her feet and rushed out. On the infrared thermal imaging devices above the soldiers' heads, only a red light could be seen flashing past before disappearing without a trace. Tang Zheng did the same. He left the scene as fast as lightning. The soldiers glanced at each other in dismay, not knowing where to go. However, the alarm went off and an ear-piercing sound resounded throughout the entire base. Immediately, a black mass of soldiers rushed out and quickly patrolled in all directions. It seemed that they were determined to ferret out the intruders. In front of them was another mountain peak. It wasn't very eye-catching among the rolling peaks and didn't even have any obvious features or markings. However, the power of the stars in the sky directly descended and sank into the mountain peak. Seeing Tang Zheng stop again and hear the footsteps of the pursuing soldiers behind him, the Empyrean fairy asked, "Are you sure this is the place?" Tang Zheng nodded without hesitation, "There's no doubt about it. That means Ji Wuxiang might be hiding under this mountain peak." "Most likely." "Then what are we waiting for? Let's charge in." "We don't even see the door. How are we going to charge in? Are we going to split this mountain apart?" This mountain peak was indeed no different from an ordinary mountain peak. It didn't seem like there was another world inside at all. However, Tang Zheng firmly believed that there was something fishy going on. The Empyrean fairy said matter-of-factly, "There's nothing wrong with splitting it apart." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. His current strength was indeed not bad, but he hadn't reached the level where he could split a mountain apart. In the underground fortress, the bureau chief suddenly turned his head and saw the situation in the base from the huge screen. The ear-piercing alarm made him frown deeply. However, from the surveillance screen, he couldn't see who the enemy was. There wasn't even a shadow. It was precisely because of this that he felt like he was facing a great enemy. Chapter 1190. This underground fortress existed independently of the military base. Even the generals in the military base didn't know about it. Those who knew about the bureau chief's whereabouts were all loyal mechanical warriors. The cultivators definitely didn't come for the military base. They came for him. Although the bureau chief didn't understand the cause and effect, he guessed something. He looked at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze and asked, "Was it you who did this?" Ji Wuxiang's lips were already curled into a smile. He said, "I found someone for you." "Who?" The bureau chief was shocked. The other party admitted it. This made him even angrier. Because, this little trick was done right under his nose, and he didn't even notice it. It was a slap in the face. The person you always wanted to get rid of but didn't manage to. The bureau chief raised his eyebrows and subconsciously exclaimed, "Tang Zheng." "Ha!" Ji Wuxiang didn't answer, but he already gave the answer. This made the bureau chief angry and shocked. Ji Wuxiang actually lured Tang Zheng here. He almost killed Tang Zheng's parents. He heard that Tang Zheng was sending people everywhere to find out about his whereabouts. If Tang Zheng met him, wouldn't he be in danger again? "How did you do it?" the bureau chief asked angrily. "Since you know about the heavenly chess, then you should know that Tang Zheng also knows a lot about it." I activated the heavenly chess, and a strong power of the stars landed here. Do you think he will chase after me? Yes, of course he will. This question didn't need to be answered at all. The answer was already displayed outside. Don't be in a hurry to gloat. You are also Tang Zheng's enemy. Don't think that you can stay out of this just because you lured him here, the bureau chief reminded him. Ji Wuxiang smiled and said nonchalantly, Tang Zheng and I are enemies, but he can't threaten me, much less chase after me. You, on the other hand, hid so well, but in the end, you were discovered by him. All your efforts were for naught. Can you accept this result? The bureau chief was silent. This result was equivalent to a destructive blow to him. This underground fortress was his last place. If it was exposed to Tang Zheng, it would be difficult for him to make a comeback. Moreover, under the double attack of Ji Wuxiang and Tang Zheng, he didn't have absolute confidence that he could escape unscathed. Damn it, Ji Wuxiang is so cunning. I fell into his trap time and time again. The bureau chief gritted his teeth. He was originally quite shrewd, but he was still no match for Ji. This made him very depressed. What should I do? I have to think of a solution. The bureau chief was flustered. Previously, he still had absolute confidence. However, ever since he found out that although the mechanical warriors surrounded the two of them tightly and attacked non-stop, they didn't have much of an effect. His confidence weakened a lot. Now that Tang Zheng had caught up to them, his confidence almost collapsed. You're very anxious, right? Like an ant on a hot pan, Ji Wuxiang said jokingly. Granny Li chimed in. He only has himself to blame. How dare he set his sights on the Lord and Tian Qi? He's seeking his own death. The bureau chief glared at Granny Li from afar, but there was nothing he could do. Ha, Tang Zheng is about to attack. Haven't you thought of a solution yet? Ji Wuxiang mocked. The bureau chief was furious and simply ignored Ji Wuxiang. His mind was spinning as he tried to think of a solution. He didn't want to give up and escape. That would be too embarrassing, and the price he had to pay would be too great. You don't have much time to think. Ji Wuxiang looked at the screen. Although he couldn't see Tang Zheng's figure, he already felt that Tang Zheng was about to make a move. Tang Zheng was indeed about to make a move. The Empyrean fairy suggested splitting the mountain, but they didn't have battle soul. What could they use to split the mountain? Can you do it? Tang Zheng asked the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy shook her head regretfully. My cultivation is higher than yours, but I'm still far from splitting the mountain. You have the best candidate, why don't you use him? Who? Azura. Him. Tang Zheng was shocked. Ever since Azura gained intelligence, Tang Zheng didn't want to release him from Sumeru world to prevent him from killing the innocent. Yes, he can split the mountain. Why don't you give it a try? Can I really do it? Can't you suppress him? Why can't you? The Empyrean fairy asked. Azura and Tang Zheng had reached a temporary agreement. Tang Zheng kept using the Ksitigarbha Sutra to stimulate Azura's intelligence. Therefore, Azura was at peace with him. Perhaps he would listen to his arrangements. Moreover, Tang Zheng had also placed a soul imprint on the Azura's body, which was his trump card. Unless it was the last moment, he would not easily use this technique. Okay, I'll ask him to help. Tang Zheng made his decision. His consciousness entered Sumeru world to communicate with Azura. Azura was indignant. He seemed to hate Tang Zheng for interrupting his time to increase his intelligence. But in the end, he agreed and flew out of Sumeru world. Azura had already become the height of an ordinary person. He was no different from an ordinary person. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. Then, his gaze fell on the Empyrean fairy. His pupils shrank. He realized that the Empyrean fairy was a powerful person. Azura, use your Azura sword to split this mountain. Tang Zheng pointed at the mountain. Azura coldly snorted and stared at the mountain peak. Suddenly, he let out a low roar and leaped into the sky. The two of them had been completely removed from the illusion, so they were exposed to everyone. Especially on the big screen in the underground fortress, their faces were vividly displayed. Ji Wuxiang and the bureau chief's gazes were attracted to Azura. They couldn't leave Azura's figure. An expert! The bureau chief exclaimed. Ji Wuxiang's expression changed. He didn't know what Azura was. It was an unfamiliar face. Although he was only an Azura, he could feel his power. Where did Tang Zheng find such a powerful helper? Ji Wuxiang faintly sighed. A scholar who has not seen each other for 3 days was a good example of this saying. Once you haven't seen Tang Zheng for a period of time, he would give you a big surprise, or a shock. Ji Wuxiang and the bureau chief looked at Azura. They didn't know what he was going to do. Suddenly, the sword flashed. A Azura sword appeared in Azura's hand. It emitted a threatening cold air. What is he going to do? The bureau chief had a bad feeling and asked. Ji Wuxiang's expression changed slightly. He opened his mouth and said, he is going to split this mountain with the sword. What? Split the mountain? The bureau chief was shocked. This was a scene that only existed in myths and legends. Could it be realized now? He was incredulous. He felt more and more nervous. Whoosh! A sword light flew out from the Azura sword. This was the sword spirit. It fell from the sky and turned into a ray of light, splitting the mountain. Boom! With an earth-shattering boom, the mountain shook, sand and stones flew, and a crack appeared on the mountain peak. It grew bigger and bigger until it became like a chasm. It quickly penetrated the mountain peak and spread to the bottom of the mountain peak. Tang Zheng was shocked. Only now did he realize how big the gap between him and Azura was. If he didn't have the Ksitigarbha Sutra, Azura would have killed him. The Empyrean fairy was not surprised. She had seen such a powerful person before. They were even more powerful than Azura. Naturally, she wasn't surprised. This big movement attracted the soldiers in the distance. They were looking for the intruders. However, they didn't find any trace of them. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. The shaking of the mountain attracted them, causing them to rush over one after another. From afar, they saw Tang Zheng and the other two, especially the Azura who was hovering in midair. He was especially dazzling, like the sun, the absolute focal point. The soldiers looked at each other. Although they were also elite soldiers, they were still ordinary humans. This scene unavoidably made them tremble with fear. It was as if the Azura's blade had struck their souls, causing them to tremble and fear from the bottom of their hearts. Especially Azura's sword. One could imagine the shock they felt from afar. Some of them even wanted to retreat. They just wanted to get as far away from Azura as possible. However, their duty as soldiers made it so that they wouldn't retreat. Once their superior gave the order, they would charge forward without hesitation. Tang Zheng chased after them and said, "Don't kill them later. We will try our best to stall for time. Give Azura enough time and space to unleash his power." Understood. The Empyrean fairy nodded. She took the lead and rushed out to meet the attacking army. Tang Zheng tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. Like a pair of rocks spreading their wings, he also landed in the middle of the army. Under the layers of encirclement, the two of them didn't panic at all. It was as if this was a common occurrence. Tang Zheng didn't take out his treasures. He knocked down the soldiers in front of him one by one. However, he didn't take their lives. He only temporarily made them unable to move. They could only watch helplessly. However, this was a military base after all. They might lack other things, but they didn't lack soldiers and weapons. Therefore, wave after wave of fully armed soldiers rushed forward. They were like ants trying to eat an elephant. They wanted to use attrition warfare to defeat the two of them. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy were strong and had extraordinary stamina. They dealt with the enemies in front of them while paying close attention to Azura. When the sword fell, it didn't completely split the mountain. It only left a huge crack. The mountain was like a person's mouth. It cracked open as if it was crying. Azura wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. He raised the Azura sword again. The sword light shone brighter and the cold air was threatening. The sword's soul burst out from the Azura sword again. It fell from the sky with an even stronger aura than before. Boom! The saber's soul slashed down along the crack that it had just created. The mountain shook and many soldiers fell on their butts. They were dumbfounded as they stared at the mountain peak. The mountain peak was completely split into two, revealing the scene below. Chapter 1191. The Azura blade finally split open the mountain. Inside the underground fortress. A loud sound came from above. Rocks flew everywhere, and dust rose up. Both sides raised their heads abruptly and stared at this scene in shock. Even the mechanical warriors subconsciously raised their heads. The bureau chief's expression changed. He cursed, "Damn it, this person actually split open the mountain. This strength, how strong is he?" Ji Wuxiang was shocked. He stared at that face. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. He exclaimed, "It's him, the Azura." He and the Azura were old acquaintances. It was just that the Azura back then was very different from the Azura now. He looked at him carefully for a long time before finally confirming that it was the Azura. He was very different from before. His body was smaller, and even the Azura blade was smaller. However, his strength had doubled. The rubble fell, smashing into quite a number of mechanical warriors. The bureau chief and Ji Wuxiang retreated at the same time to avoid the rocks and the terrifying power of the Azura blade. The two of them looked at each other. The bureau chief also saw many complicated emotions in the Azura's eyes. He said fiercely, "This is what you did. Now you know what the consequences are, right?" Ji Wuxiang snorted and said, "The underground fortress has been destroyed. Do you think you can keep me here? As for the Azura, I'll leave it to you." Although Ji Wuxiang was shocked, he was not afraid at all. "Shameless. What is this Azura?" the bureau chief asked. "The Azura is a monster formed from the Yin energy of the ghost world. It is very strong and bloodthirsty. I believe it will be to your liking," Ji Wuxiang explained. The bureau chief was shocked. The Azura actually had such a strong background. Ji Wuxiang knew so much about the Azura, which meant that he must have known about the Azura long ago and done his homework. That was indeed the case. Ever since the Azura destroyed the heavenly chess, Ji Wuxiang had been asking around. In the end, he only knew a little about the Azura after much effort. However, this already made him very shocked. He became more and more aware of Tang Zheng's extraordinariness, and his enmity became even more intense. The pursuers stopped in their tracks and stared at the scene with their mouths agape. A mountain peak was actually split into two halves, just like a scene from a myth. They were all frozen in place, not knowing what to do. Shura landed on the ground and walked toward Tang Zheng with the Shura saber in his hand. His eyes were fixed on the Empyrean Fairy. Azura's cultivation base was at the pinnacle of the deity transformation stage, and he was only a thin line away from the Grand Ascension stage. However, Empyrean Fairy was already at the first stage of the Grand Ascension stage, so it was naturally quite easy for him to identify this, so he was very wary. The Empyrean Fairy stared at Shura, replaying the scene in her mind. Her cultivation level was higher than Azura's, but her Dharma treasure was the map of mountains and rivers, which was not as sharp as Azura's saber. That was why she agreed to let Azura split the mountain. Of course, she also wanted to see Azura's strength. Now, she finally understood that Shura's strength was not shallow. He was one of the strongest people she had ever met in her life. Even if she was at the first stage of the Grand Ascension stage, she must not underestimate him. Their eyes met, and an invisible pressure spread in the air. Tang Zheng moved slightly to block their gazes and said, "Shura, your mission is complete. Go back to Sumera Heavens." Shura did not comment. He looked over Tang Zheng's shoulder unwillingly and looked at the Empyrean fairy behind him. In the end, he nodded sullenly and said, "Okay." Then, with a flash of light, he disappeared. Ah! Screams rang out again, and there was a commotion among the pursuers. This series of unforeseen events had almost overturned their worldview. Even if they were well-trained elite soldiers, their mental endurance might not be strong. As a result, this scene completely frightened them. There were some who cried out miserably, running backwards. Even some people with strong mental fortitude felt their legs go weak and did not have the courage to rush forward. Tang Zheng ignored the pursuers and strode toward the split mountain peak. The Empyrean fairy followed by his side like a shadow. They could not wait to see what was hidden in the mountain peak. Rising into the air, the two of them floated in mid-air and looked down at the mountain peak below. They could clearly see the situation inside. Hundreds of mechanical warriors were also looking up, looking at them expressionlessly. Looking at their eyes, Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy had the same thought. These people were like walking corpses. Their eyes were calm, and there was a very strange feeling. Their knowledge was not ordinary. Although they did not find the fluctuations of inner strength and magical power from the mechanical warriors, they unanimously judged that their strength was not simple. Their attention was quickly attracted by the others. Ji Wuxiang and the Prime Minister looked at each other from a distance, facing each other. This caused Tang Zheng's pupils to shrink as he was incomparably astonished. Why are these two walking together? That's not right, they seem to be in a hostile state. Ji Wuxiang, Granny Li, and Ji Wuxiang also saw the two people in the sky at the same time. They had already removed the illusion and appeared clearly in mid-air. Looking down, they stood proudly, exuding a powerful aura. Ji Wuxiang, "Sir, I've been looking for you for a long time." "So you were hiding here," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. Ji Wuxiang looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. Then, he laughed and said, "Now that you've found me, what are you going to do? Has celestial chess succeeded?" Tang Zheng asked impatiently. "I knew that with your intelligence and insight, it wouldn't be difficult for you to discover this. Celestial chess has succeeded. What do you think? You also contributed to this. If it weren't for your help back then, celestial chess definitely wouldn't have succeeded so quickly, right?" Ji Wuxiang said jokingly. Tang Zheng had helped to perfect celestial chess back then. Although he later destroyed celestial chess and even got rid of some of the players, in the end, he made celestial chess take a big step forward and solved many of Ji Wuxiang's doubts. This was very important for him to perfect celestial chess in the future. However, Ji Wuxiang's words were obviously sarcastic, causing Tang Zheng to frown. He said unhappily, "Ji Wuxiang, you don't have to say such sarcastic words. Now that celestial chess has succeeded, as long as I'm here, I definitely won't watch you carry out your scheme." The Prime Minister's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "What scheme does he have?" "You don't know?" The Prime Minister looked confused. It was obvious that he didn't know. Tang Zheng hurriedly said, "Celestial chess uses the world as a chessboard, and you and I are on the chessboard. Naturally, we are chess pieces that are at the mercy of Ji Wuxiang. Are you willing to accept this?" The Prime Minister raised his thick eyebrows and stared at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze. He said hatefully, "Your wild ambition is extraordinarily big. You actually dare to have such wishful thinking." Ji Wuxiang looked indifferent. He said, "Don't tell me you didn't have such thoughts when you wanted to take celestial chess for yourself. You don't have the right to criticize me." The Prime Minister's thoughts were exposed, and his face turned red. He only knew a little about celestial chess, but he had already guessed how powerful it was. Now that he heard Tang Zheng's words, he was even more certain of this point and had a deeper understanding of it. While he was scolding Ji Wuxiang, he was indeed even more tempted by celestial chess. Seeing his reaction, Ji Wuxiang's lips curled up in a disdainful smile. He said to Tang Zheng, "See, these politicians are so hypocritical. They clearly want it, but they say the opposite in a righteous manner. You're talking nonsense. the Prime Minister rebuked in exasperation. Ji Wuxiang, however, was not afraid at all. He continued, the angrier you are, the more it shows that you have a guilty conscience. Tang Zheng, let me tell you something else. Do you still remember the Dragon Group's super warriors and the King Kong mecha? Tang Zheng's head trembled, and he nodded subconsciously. These two things allowed him to see the power of technology. Look at these. What are they? Ji Wuxiang pointed at the mechanical warriors and asked. Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes slightly and stared straight at the mechanical warriors, as if he wanted to see through them. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and a look of shock flashed past his eyes. He actually did not see any signs of life in these soldiers. Although they were alive, there was no sign of life. They were just like wooden puppets. Seeing Tang Zheng's reaction, Ji Wuxiang said meaningfully, did you see anything? What are they? Tang Zheng asked in a low voice. He did not say what kind of people they were, but what kind of people they were. It was obvious that he did not treat them as people. The combination of a super warrior and a King Kong mecha. Have you ever thought of this? But he did it silently. You can't help but admire his determination and perseverance. Back then, Dragon Group's Xing Feng probably never thought of this even in his dreams, Ji Wuxiang explained. Tang Zheng was shocked, and his heart beat wildly. It was precisely because he had seen the power of these two types of technology that he had a deep impression of these two combined products. He realized the power of this new product. Now you know the seriousness of this matter, right? Ji Wuxiang continued to fan the flames. The bureau chief roared in exasperation, Ji Wuxiang, don't cry crocodile tears. Are you a good person? You want to treat the entire world as your chess pieces, you are the one who is crazy. Why did the government develop technology? Isn't it because they were forced by you martial artists and cultivators? You are tyrannical and unscrupulous. What do you think of the government? The bureau chief's question was powerful and resonant, causing the entire place to be silent. Tang Zheng asked himself, ever since he started cultivating, his strength had gotten stronger and stronger, and he had indeed gradually stopped caring about the government. It was no wonder that the bureau chief had such a big reaction. He had to endure hardships to come up with something like the mechanical warriors. But thinking about it from another perspective, Tang Zheng was not arrogant because of his abilities, and he did not cause trouble for the common people. On the contrary, he had continuously used his own abilities to prevent danger time and time again. On the other hand, the bureau chief's righteous words and actions were mixed with a lot of private goods. Chapter 1192. The bureau chief was rendered speechless by Tang Zheng's words. He glared at Tang Zheng in shame, but there was nothing he could do about it. Ji Wuxiang laughed and clapped. Brilliant, your words are powerful and resonant. Who knows how many people are thinking about it? You colluded with each other and colluded with each other. One day, I will make you pay a painful price. The bureau chief's face was red as he threatened fiercely. There was no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides, so the bureau chief naturally wouldn't be nice to him. He looked at Tang Zheng as if he wanted to skin him alive. You will have to wait until that day comes. Ji Wuxiang shrugged nonchalantly, pointed at Tang Zheng, and said, do you think he will let you off this time? The bureau chief's pupils shrank, and there was some fear in his heart. Especially when he recalled the scene of the Azura splitting the mountain. It was so majestic and terrifying. Tang Zheng didn't answer and just looked at the bureau chief coldly. The bureau chief's heart sank as he realized the answer. He shouted, stop them. With that order, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. The mechanical warriors split into two, one attacking Tang Zheng, and the other attacking Ji Wuxiang. Ji Wuxiang signaled Granny Li with his eyes and retreated. Granny Li took the hint and quietly retreated. Ji Wuxiang's motive was very obvious. He purposely used celestial chess to lure Tang Zheng over, and then let Tang Zheng and the bureau chief fight while he reaped the benefits. This idea was very vicious and cunning. This plan succeeded. Of course, he wouldn't stay to see the result. He didn't want to be entangled. Then, all his efforts would be wasted. Ji Wuxiang glanced in Tang Zheng's direction from the corner of his eyes and realized that the mechanical warriors had already started fighting with him. Both sides were fighting back and forth without stopping. Seeing how Tang Zheng dealt with it so easily, Ji Wuxiang's eyelids kept twitching. There was no doubt that Tang Zheng's strength had improved again. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. This sentence was very suitable for Tang Zheng. A bright light flashed through Ji Wuxiang's eyes. No matter who won or lost, he would be the biggest winner. "Let's go," he said in a low voice. With a light tap of his toes, he leaped out of the underground fortress. Granny Li followed closely behind, leaving behind an afterimage. She was 1 step slower than Ji Wuxiang. Seeing this, the mechanical warrior did not say anything and chased after him. Their jumping ability was not as good as Ji Wuxiang's and Granny Li's, but flames spurted out from their feet, and they soared into the sky like rockets. This scene made one involuntarily think of the Vajra mecha flying in the sky. Therefore, it was not surprising that this batch of mechanical warriors had the ability to fly. After all, the mechanical warriors were a product that combined the advantages of super soldiers and Vajra mecha. Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li both noticed the pursuers behind them, but the two did not panic. Instead, they dove into the large army like fish in water, causing waves of exclamations. They were immediately submerged in the large army. There were thousands of soldiers chasing after Tang Zheng. When the two of them dove into the army, it was like a drop of water entering the sea. No one could find them anymore. The mechanical warriors stood in the air. Their eyes swept through the crowd like a scanner, but they did not find any trace of their target. The soldiers on the ground raised their heads to look at the mechanical warriors in the sky, and their gazes underwent a complete change. They had been stationed here day and night to train, day and night without stopping. However, they had not realized that this seemingly ordinary mountain peak actually had a completely different world, and that there were so many powerful fellows hidden here. Although they did not have as much information as Tang Zheng and the others, they could guess that the people flying above them were not ordinary people. Although both sides were dressed similarly, with military uniforms. "Come back and annihilate them." The bureau chief saw the scene outside the underground fortress from the big screen and secretly scolded Ji Wuxiang for being cunning. He actually let him slip away. There were priorities. Ji Wuxiang had left and did not pose a threat for the time being. Therefore, they had to use all means to deal with Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy. Tang Zheng had already exchanged more than 10 moves with the mechanical warriors and gradually understood their strength and routines. The standard of these mechanical warriors was really extraordinary. Ordinary people were not their match at all. Even many martial artists and practitioners might not be able to defeat them. From this point, it was enough to show the strength of the mechanical warriors, and the bureau chief was not simple. He actually picked up the experience and information left behind by the dragon team and quietly made such achievements. Back then, Xing Feng could not catch up with this progress. Because they knew this, Tang Zheng and Ji Wuxiang both realized that they had underestimated the bureau chief in the past and had to reevaluate him. More than 100 mechanical warriors rushed toward Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy, blocking their vision. The two of them remained calm and dealt with the situation with ease. A series of muffled sounds rang out. Every time a mechanical warrior took an attack from them, they would fall to the ground and turn into scrap metal. They either drooped their heads or lay on the ground, emitting sparks and smoke. The soldiers in the distance stretched their necks and could only roughly see the scene in the underground fortress. Their faces turned even paler, and many of them retreated, wishing that they could increase the distance between them and the two of them. Use your killing moves and get rid of these guys quickly. Anyway, they are not humans. Tang Zheng finally lost his patience. These guys were really not afraid of death. They knew that there were tigers in the mountains, but they still insisted on going there. How annoying. Bang bang bang. With a series of muffled sounds, the mechanical warriors fell to the ground one after another. There were many large holes on their bodies, and this scene made everyone feel respect and fear. Hiss! When the soldiers saw this scene, all of them gasped. Just now, they wanted to stop the two of them and even chased after them. It turned out that the two of them were not afraid of them, but just did not want to fight with them. Everyone broke out in cold sweat, and a chill rose from the bottom of their hearts. They felt a lingering fear. At a glance, other than Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy, there was no third person standing in the underground fortress. The ground was littered with broken mechanical warriors. Where is the bureau chief? Tang Zheng was shocked and looked around, but he didn't even see the leader's figure. What happened? The two of them looked at each other. They did not expect the bureau chief to sneak away from under their noses. The bureau chief is just an ordinary person. He is not a cultivator, nor a martial artist. This fortress is so high up. Is there a third way to go? Tang Zheng was confused and started to mutter. The Azura's slash not only split the mountain peak, but also destroyed many of the facilities in the underground fortress. The elevator could not be used at all, so it was impossible for the bureau chief to escape from the elevator. This underground fortress was so high from the ground. How did he manage to climb up so stealthily? Just now, the two of them were surrounded by mechanical warriors and did not have the energy to pay attention to the bureau chief's movements. Although they saw Ji Wuxiang and Granny Li retreating, they could not do anything. They did not have the time to look around, let alone chase after them. Tang Zheng angrily stomped his foot and said, "What bad luck, I let them escape again. These two guys are too cunning, hiding here and there. I finally found them with great difficulty, but I let them escape again." The Empyrean Fairy did not say a word. She was deep in thought, and her eyes kept changing. Tang Zheng noticed her strange behavior and asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Don't you think the bureau chief is different from before?" The Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Different? Tang Zheng's head moved as he recalled the scene just now. Like a movie, he replayed it frame by frame. Sure enough, he found a slight difference. If it was not for the Empyrean Fairy's reminder, he would definitely have overlooked this difference. He was more confident, and this confidence came from his body. Tang Zheng was very familiar with this. This was because he was also in the same situation in the past. Ever since he became a cultivator, his strength increased day by day. That kind of confidence that came from his body became stronger and stronger. Could it be that he is also a cultivator? Tang Zheng was shocked and a strange thought came to his mind. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes shone like bright stars. She did not deny this point and said thoughtfully, "We can't rule out this possibility." What, is there really such a possibility? How did he do it? He is so old. Moreover, how did he hide his cultivation level? If he can escape from our eyes, then how high is his cultivation level? A series of questions came one after another. It was easy to imagine the shock and confusion in Tang Zheng's mind. The Empyrean Fairy was not surprised and said, "It is not impossible to forcefully raise a person's cultivation level. There are many secret techniques in the world that can do this. However, there is a huge side effect. This person's cultivation level will be fixed in the future and be limited to a fixed realm, unable to improve." Tang Zheng suddenly understood and said, "Then this is the bureau chief's situation?" "It is possible." "Then who could do this?" "Only he knows about this." "Perhaps this is the source of his confidence. Together with these mechanical warriors, there's probably no one in the government who's stronger than him in today's world. It's no wonder he's so confident." The mysterious maiden of the nine heavens sighed. Tang Zheng's expression darkened. He knew what this meant. As the bureau chief's strength increased, his ambition would also explode. It was no wonder he would have ideas about Tian Qi and Ji Wuxiang. However, this was no different from asking a tiger for its skin. In the end, he would be harmed instead. "What do you plan to do next?" the Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng stared blankly at the messy underground fortress. His gaze swept past the mechanical warriors and his heart sank. The power of technology was undeniable and could not be underestimated. The bureau chief had luckily escaped this time, so he would be more careful next time. It would be harder to find him than to reach the heavens. The power of science and technology would be a great help to him, and it wouldn't be surprising if he invented some strange things in the future. However, when they met again in the future, his strength would be vastly different from what it was now, and he would be an even greater threat. Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. Although he thought of this, there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng, what are you looking at? Chapter 1193. Xian envy of the ninth heavens exclamation startled Tang Zheng. His attention was instantly attracted as he turned to look at the huge screen. There were many surveillance images on the screen, and some of them were familiar to him. Our house. Tang Zheng was shocked as he immediately recognized that this was actually the scene of the surveillance camera outside his house. The bureau chief was monitoring his house. This made him furious. He slammed his fist on the ground and roared, "Damn it!" No matter who it was, they would have the same reaction when they saw their house being monitored. The Empyrean fairy frowned. Looking at the surveillance images, she could imagine that her every move was being watched by someone else. It was needless to say how angry an expert would be when he found out about this cruel reality. The bureau chief's actions not only provoked Tang Zheng, but also deeply provoked the Empyrean fairy. Her murderous aura surged. Tang Zheng glanced at the Empyrean fairy and said, "Looks like he has been planning this for a long time. He was already dissatisfied with us and even wanted to kill us. However, we didn't take him seriously at all. This kind of underestimation will definitely lead to a disaster. It's just that we haven't reached that stage yet." The Empyrean fairy nodded in agreement and said, "This is God's will. We must be wary of him in the future, especially since he has the mechanical warriors." Tang Zheng looked at the messy mechanical warriors on the ground and thought of the same question Ji Wuxiang had. He said, since he can create more than 100 mechanical warriors, then it's not impossible for him to mass-produce mechanical warriors or even build a mechanical warrior army. What kind of scene would that be? Tang Zheng couldn't imagine it. However, one thing is for sure. If the bureau chief has such a powerful force, it might not be a good thing. That's because he's too selfish. The Empyrean fairy felt the same way. She never had a good impression of officials. After all, Qin Shi Huang was the greatest example in history. It was hard for her to have a good impression of him. Then what are you going to do? Tang Zheng pondered and said, "This matter is of great importance. It's not something that can be decided with just a few words. Let's leave this place first. It won't be too late to decide later." The Empyrean fairy nodded and didn't object. They looked at each other and jumped at the same time. Whoosh! With two sounds of breaking through the air, the two of them soared into the sky, causing the soldiers outside to exclaim in surprise. They stared at the sky dumbfoundedly, but the two figures quickly disappeared, and not even their shadows could be seen. As for what kind of chain reaction this mess would cause, they were not in the mood to care. After returning home, Tang Zheng first searched around his house and found many hidden surveillance cameras, which clearly recorded the movements around his house. This large villa area was already protected by a large array. Ordinary people had no qualifications or opportunities to enter. Apart from the peripheral surveillance, it was indeed difficult to find an effective way. This kind of surveillance could only give a general understanding of what was going on inside the array, and couldn't touch the core. However, it was enough to know a lot of secrets. Among them was the backyard of Tang Zheng's villa, where a transmission array was set up. This was one of Tang Zheng's big secrets, and the transmission array was the key to connecting to the island. In this way, wouldn't the scene of him using the transmission array many times be monitored? A feeling of uneasiness instantly enveloped Tang Zheng. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he took down all the cameras. This movement attracted the attention of others, who gathered around and looked at the cameras in his hands. Their faces were filled with confusion. What is this? Yi Dingdang asked curiously, Why are there so many cameras around our house? Did you send someone to install them? How could it be me? Tang Zheng said coldly, some bad people deliberately installed these to monitor us. Ah, monitoring? Yi Dingdang covered her mouth as her eyes widened. Her mind raced as she immediately thought of how she had climbed into Tang Zheng's room through the window in the middle of the night. Didn't this mean that all of this was recorded by the surveillance cameras? So embarrassing. Although she was carefree, this matter was too private and should not be made public. Therefore, she was extremely angry. Her almond eyes were wide open as she said with a fiendish expression, "Who did this? We must not let him off." Although the others did not have as much information as Yi Dingdang, they still felt uncomfortable all over. They said indignantly, "This person is scheming and actually wants to deal with our family. We must not let our guard down." Lord Envoy. Suddenly, the witch clan disciples all knelt down in front of Tang Zheng and said with incomparable shame, "Please punish us, Lord Envoy. It's all because of our incompetence that we didn't discover the enemy's vicious intentions. We almost caused a disaster." Everyone was shocked by the actions of the witch clan disciples. Tang Zheng immediately went to help them up, but they did not get up at all. They insisted on kneeling on the ground, as if this was the only way to dispel a portion of the guilt in their hearts. Tang Zheng looked at them helplessly and said earnestly, "I order you all to get up. All of this is not your fault at all. Everyone has moments of carelessness. Moreover, all of this is because the enemy is too cunning. It's not your dereliction of duty, understand?" The witch clan disciples looked at each other in dismay. Seeing that Tang Zheng was furious, they did not dare to disobey his orders and stood up resentfully. Tang Zheng swept his gaze across the witch clan disciples. Of course, he understood the thoughts of the witch clan disciples. The witch clan was absolutely loyal to him, and any mistakes they made would be magnified infinitely in their hearts. Tang Zheng did not wish to see this scene. "I'll say it again. If there's anything in the future, don't take responsibility for it. I'm not a muddle-headed person. Don't tell me that I can't tell who's on my side and who's on my enemy." Tang Zheng deliberately asked in a deep voice. The witch clan disciples all revealed looks of shame and lowered their heads. "So, I don't want to see you all volunteer to ask for forgiveness again. Do you understand? I am a person who rewards and punishes clearly. If you have really made a mistake, I will naturally not be merciful." Tang Zheng's aura surged, especially the dragon's might that was faintly discernible, causing people to not have the slightest thought of resisting. There was only the word, "submit," in their hearts. When the few women saw this scene, their eyes lit up as they looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. This was their lover, he was truly a hero. Who did this? After calming down, Fang Shishir asked curiously. This was the doubt in everyone's hearts as they looked at him curiously. Tang Zheng muttered to himself and said, "Chief." "What?" "It's him." Everyone was shocked and stared at Tang Zheng with their eyes wide open. Obviously, they were the same as Tang Zheng and had neglected this important mission. Although his identity was illustrious, in their hearts, cultivators and warriors were superior. Chapter 1194. Everyone suppressed the shock in their hearts and fell into deep thought. The chief was not just anyone, he was the central figure of the country's power and had great power and influence. They had completely fallen into a hostile relationship with him. Moreover, after listening to Tang Zheng's introduction of the mechanical warriors, they were even more moved. Everyone understood that if the mechanical warriors formed an army, it would not be any weaker than the army of cultivators. Since ancient times, there had been sects formed by cultivators in every dynasty, but almost none of them were tied together to form an army. The mechanical warriors were different. They could form an army and use the power of technology to arm themselves. It went without saying how terrifying their combat strength would be. Everyone sat together in silence. This situation was unexpected. If they continued to let it develop, it might develop into the third most powerful force in addition to the demons and the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. It might even overshadow them. Tian Chanzi was silent for a long time before he finally said, "This is the worst-case scenario, but there is one thing that you did not notice. This mechanical warrior army is indeed extraordinary, but in terms of experts, they are often inferior to the demons and the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. In war, experts often play a decisive role, even to the point of influencing the overall situation. In the Battle of Zhuolu, experts played a decisive role. Therefore, Tian Chanzi's words were not false. But the Empyrean Fairy and I feel that the chief is no longer an ordinary person, but a cultivator," Tang Zheng said in a low voice. This was the consensus between him and the Empyrean Fairy, although he did not understand how he did it or how he hid his cultivation. But there was no doubt that this was an indisputable fact. Cultivator? Everyone was shocked. A cultivator's lifespan and combat strength would be greatly increased. If this was true, then the chief's strength would rise to another level, especially with the help of the mechanical warrior army. The explosive combat strength would be unimaginable. So, if we need to defeat him, we must first restrict his power. This is the key to his mechanical warrior army. Without power and resources, the mechanical warrior army is just a castle in the air. Li Xiaotian finally spoke. She racked her brains and a mature and bold idea gradually formed in her mind. Hearing this, everyone turned their heads at the same time and looked at Li Xiaotian with burning eyes. Tang Zheng's heart stirred. "What brilliant plan do you have?" he asked. He knew that Li Xiaotian had always been resourceful, especially when it came to scheming. After all, she had once been the holy maiden of the Li Palace. Although she had lost her memories, her talent had not been affected in the slightest. Li Xiaotian's lips curled into a smile. Her seduction skills were maturing day by day. Every frown and smile of hers was full of flirtatiousness, causing one's heartstrings to tremble. "Remove the firewood from under the cauldron." Li Xiaotian bit her white teeth and softly spat out 4 words. Everyone began to mutter in their hearts, not understanding the meaning of these words. Li Xiaotian no longer kept him in suspense and said with a smile, "Where does his power and resources come from?" "Of course it's his identity." "Yes, so as long as we expose his identity and remove that outer layer, he will be an ordinary cultivator. After all of his resources have disappeared, how could he possibly threaten us?" A feeling of suddenly seeing the light, as if the clouds had parted to see the bright moon, gradually filled his heart. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright as he looked at Li Xiaotian. This plan of removing the firewood from under the cauldron was indeed very powerful, but it also had to be said that it was extremely daring. This was because, after all, the chief was at the pinnacle of power. Although he was not the head of the country, he was still one of the top people. Shaking him was extremely difficult. Li Xiaotian did not seem to care at all. She continued, "He has many opponents. They are all hoping for him to make a mistake. They are even secretly collecting information on him. As long as we reveal the matter of the mecha warriors to them, then we don't need to do anything. They will be impatient to deal with him. Because, once he truly creates the mecha warriors, then there will be no one else in this country who can do anything. Everything they have now will go down the drain. For their own benefits, they will definitely stop at nothing to attack him." Many people who had not yet understood heard this and finally understood the brilliance of removing the firewood from under the cauldron. Only someone as daring as Li Xiaotian, who had never placed any importance on being an official, would come up with this kind of plan. Tian Chanzi looked deeply at Li Xiaotian and could not help but say that he was impressed. He had always prided himself on being smart, but he had never thought of this kind of plan. "I agree. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. This is the most beneficial method for us." Tian Chanzi said in agreement. Empyrean Fairy thought for a while and also nodded. "I agree." The others all looked at Tang Zheng. This matter was of great importance, and the final decision rested in Tang Zheng's hands. Tang Zheng's eyes kept changing. This decision was of great significance and had far-reaching effects. He had no choice but to be cautious. In the end, he fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Fine. Now that we've been forced into this situation, he can't wait to put me to death time and time again. If I continue to think about it, then wouldn't I be letting him ride on my head? So what if he has a high position? He doesn't have the final say in this country, and he's not an ancient emperor. Even an emperor can be pulled down from his horse if he's willing to be cut into pieces, let alone a mere high official. After saying this, the thoughts in his heart suddenly became clear, and he felt a lot more relaxed. After listening to his impassioned speech, everyone's eyes were different, and they all bloomed with excitement. Although Princess Anne was a member of the royal family, there was also a deep-rooted rebellious spirit in her bones. Otherwise, how could she have done so many extraordinary things? What she yearned for the most was to fight for freedom and be a hero who could break free from the shackles and shackles. This was the work of romanticism. But she fell for this. She stared at Tang Zheng without blinking. Her heart was like a flower that slowly bloomed, and a fragrance filled her entire body. Do you need any help? I can ask my father for help. Princess Anne impatiently said. No need. This is our own family matter. If outsiders interfere, it will instead cause unnecessary trouble and lead to more disturbances. Li Xiaotian rushed to reject Princess Anne. This was a family matter. If it involved foreign powers, there were indeed too many uncontrollable factors, and it could even develop in the opposite direction. This kind of thing where they were going in the opposite direction was definitely not something they would do. And slightly pouted. Li Xiaotian's rejection made her unhappy. She looked at Tang Zheng with expectant eyes. And, thank you for your good intentions. Li Xiaotian's words are reasonable. If you interfere, it will only make the situation more complicated. Tang Zheng tactfully refused. And was a little disappointed. She made an "oh" sound, but she did not give up and said, then if you need any help, you must tell me. I will do my best to help you. This declaration caused the other women to raise their eyebrows. This was openly trying to poach someone. The princess's style was indeed swift and decisive. It was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Tang Zheng accepted her good intentions and then said to Li Xiaotian, since you proposed this plan, then you must have a detailed plan. I would like to hear the details. Li Xiaotian faintly smiled. She thought that he really did understand her. This feeling was very good. She suppressed the distracting thoughts in her heart and organized her thoughts. She said, do you still remember the pillow talk plan I told you about? Tang Zheng nodded. The others raised their eyebrows and curiously looked at the two. How come they did not know about this pillow talk plan? Could it be that there was a secret between the two of them? In reality, Tang Zheng did not place this pillow talk plan in his heart. This was Li Xiaotian's full operation, so he simply acted as a hands-off shopkeeper. Seeing his family's suspicious and curious faces, Tang Zheng simply explained the pillow talk plan. When everyone heard this, they could not help but be secretly shocked. So the Li Palace still had such a hidden power. This seemed insignificant, but in many critical moments, it could play a pivotal role. The pillow talk plan was very successful. Many of the higher-ups have a good impression of you, but they have never had the opportunity to meet you. They are rivals with the chief and have long been incompatible. As long as we do not reveal the chief's strength and plan, they will definitely not be able to sit still and attack. The plan to take drastic measures will succeed. Li Xiaotian said confidently. Hi, truly hi. Tian Chanzi could not help but give a thumbs up as he praised from the bottom of his heart. Women could hold up half the sky. This Li Xiaotian truly had the ability to laugh at the world. Although his personal strength was not ridiculously high, the key point was that his scheming and strategizing skills were rarely matched by others. This was the group of people at the top of the hierarchy who were included in the calculations. Of course, this was for their own good. If the chief really succeeded, then their positions would be in jeopardy. Presumably, they would also be very happy to know this news. Marshall looked at Li Xiaotian with a complicated expression. Her cultivation was higher than Li Xiaotian's, but in terms of scheming, she was lacking by a level. Back then, she and Li Xiaotian were listed as the candidates for the next sect master and palace master of the martial organization Enli Palace. This was not without reason. One person's martial strength was off the charts, while the other was unparalleled in scheming. They were both heroes among women. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdang looked at each other at the same time. Both of them felt the pressure. Li Xiaotian and Princess and both had Sima Zhao's heart. Everyone knew this, but they had no way to stop each other. Especially this time, Li Xiaotian was able to think of such an ingenious plan, but they were completely helpless. This was the gap between them. Without a doubt, after this matter, Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian would be closer in the future. Li Xiaotian would also take this opportunity to get closer to Tang Zheng. As for what would happen in the future, no one knew. Suddenly, a sense of crisis arose in his heart. Other than being the first to get to know Tang Zheng, they were completely inferior in all other aspects. The two of them frowned and sank into deep worry. They had to find another way to realize their value. No one else noticed the abnormality of the two of them. Li Xiaotian continued, "If you agree, then I will send someone to carry it out. Before long, there will be results." Chapter 1195. Li Xiaotian obeyed Tang Zheng's orders, and for the next 10 days or so, he did not return home, and his whereabouts were unknown. The capital was calm, but in reality, there were undercurrents. The Yen family sent out some news, and the things that happened in the military base in the suburbs of the capital were still spread out a little, but it was very different from the truth. The mountain peak was split in half, described as the result of some kind of advanced weapon test, which attracted the attention of many countries' militaries. When Yen Padian mentioned this matter, he shook his head and sneered. He clearly said that this was a smokescreen released by the officials, and the actual situation was definitely not like that. Tang Zheng secretly praised, as expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Although Yen Padian did not personally witness it, he was not deceived. Since the Yen family had taken the initiative to inform him, Tang Zheng did not hide anything and explained the whole story in a few words. Yen Padian turned pale with fright and was unable to shut his mouth for a long time. After a long while, Yen Padian finally regained his senses and said with a serious expression, "Young Master Tang, it's not that this old man is timid, but the chief is definitely not an ordinary person. You and him are already like fire and water, I'm afraid you have to be fully prepared." Back then, the few great clans had secretly fought against the officials, causing the officials to be in a very passive situation. As the person in the middle, Yen Padian knew more inside information than the others. For more than 100 years, the few great clans had been suppressing the officials. No matter what era it was always the same, because their clan's development was too deeply rooted. However, ever since the chief took power, this situation had quietly changed, especially since the relationship between the few great clans had deteriorated day by day, and the open and hidden battles had become more and more intense. Yen Padian was extremely observant, and in the end, placed all of this on the head of the chief. He was the one who had secretly manipulated all of this, but it was extremely secretive, and did not leave behind many clues. By the time Yen Padian truly discovered it, the situation in Huaxia had already undergone an earth-shattering change. Cultivators had appeared out of nowhere, and it would be useless to bring up this old debt. This time, after hearing the chief's magnificent feat, Yen Padian revealed this inside information. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly, and he felt deep respect for her. One could not judge a book by its cover. The chief had actually unknowingly done so many magnificent deeds. If there were no cultivators involved, perhaps, the power of the officials would become stronger and stronger, and the few great clans would be in imminent danger. If Tang Zheng had not defeated the great families, there was a high chance that they would have declined. It was only a matter of time. The Ye family is still under the support of the chief. In the past half a year, they have attacked the city and taken out the stronghold, and their strength has greatly increased. They have already recovered to their previous level. Although they are still unable to threaten our existence, they will definitely be stronger than before. Yen Padian said earnestly. The strong rise of the Yi family made people see how extraordinary the chief was. With just support, the Yi family regained so much vitality. It really made people have a whole new level of respect for him. Then do you think the Ye family will know the whereabouts of the chief? Tang Zheng asked curiously. In the past 10 days or so, he had not been idle. He had spread out an inescapable net to search for the bureau chief's whereabouts, but to no avail. He was like a drop of water falling into the sea, without a trace. This made Tang Zheng feel as if there was a blade at his back. Maybe. After all, their relationship is not shallow. Yen Padian hesitated for a moment, and said doubtfully. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's eyes, as if he was deep in thought. Yi Dingdang looked at him and immediately realized the opportunity, and said, I'll go to the Ye family for you. In the past 10 days or so, she and Fang Shishir had been vexed over their position and role. Now that they saw an opportunity, she naturally could not shirk her responsibility and volunteered herself. Yi Dingdang and the Ye family could be considered as fire and water. Her trip this time would definitely not be smooth, and might even be dangerous. Yi Dingdang was very clear on this point, but she was once a member of the Ye family, so she was the best candidate. Moreover, only danger and difficulty could explain her value, so she had to go even more. Tang Zheng frowned as he looked at her, and said, I'll go alone, you don't have to go. Although Yi Xuanji was still alive, Yi Kuo was currently handling the specific matters. Yi Xuanji had always been in hiding, but in reality, the one who was most likely to be in contact with the chief was him. Therefore, he had to find Yi Xuanji this time. Last time, because of the nightmare, there was a fight in the Ye family. After that, Tang Zheng never went to the Ye family again. This time, there might be a fierce battle. The Ye family was not a match for Tang Zheng, he was not worried, but he did not want Yi Dingdang to face the Ye family directly. This was a scene that Yi Tianlei did not want to see. Yi Dingdang did not have such concerns, she grabbed Tang Zheng's arm, as if she would not let go if he did not agree. Fang Shishir saw through Yi Dingdang's thoughts and was not jealous. Instead, she was happy, as this was equivalent to finding a breakthrough. Thus, she immediately pleaded for Yi Dingdang, just bring her along, maybe she can help. Seeing Fang Shishir speak, Tang Zheng was silent. Fang Shishir rarely asked him for help. Since she opened her mouth, Tang Zheng could not refuse. He reluctantly said, okay, but Dingdang, you have to listen to me. Don't act rashly. We are just going to inquire about the situation. If it is not a last resort, there is no need to fight. Yi Dingdang smiled and nodded, don't worry, I am very obedient. Outside the Ye family, Yi Dingdang had not been here for a long time. Looking at this familiar and strange scene, her face changed subtly, and she sighed faintly. If you don't want to face them, it's not too late to go back now. Tang Zheng advised. Yi Dingdang stuck out her chest, causing it to slightly tremble. She was as proud as a beautiful peacock as she heroically said, do you think I would be afraid of them? Humph, it's not like I have a guilty conscience. They should be the ones who have a guilty conscience. Seeing her high fighting spirit, Tang Zheng smiled and said, we don't need to force our way in and cause too much trouble. We just need to find Yi Xuanji. I have lived here before, so I know where he is. In order to prove her worth, Yi Dingdang impatiently said, normally, when he has nothing to do, he will definitely stay in his own training ground to cultivate. That is a small black room where normal people would not be able to get close to. There are many loyal and devoted people of the Yi clan hidden in the surroundings to protect him from being disturbed while he is cultivating. Tang Zheng said, oh, then show me the way. I will take you in. Yi Dingdang was beaming with joy. Her heart was filled with anticipation and excitement. She was not a girl who knew her place, and there was a rebellious feeling in her bones. Tang Zheng conveniently hugged Yi Dingdang's willow waist, causing her to tremble slightly before taking advantage of the situation to lean into his embrace. The warm embrace nearly caused her to become intoxicated. She and Tang Zheng were already very familiar with each other's bodies. Leaning into his embrace, she still had a strange feeling, as if she had been electrocuted. This way. Yi Dingdang pointed in a direction far away. Chapter 1196. In the Ye family's huge courtyard house, there were countless people lying on the ground. Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang were both stunned by this scene. The two of them silently landed in the courtyard and looked at each other in dismay as they looked at the crowd around them. What's going on? Yi Dingdang asked in a low voice. Tang Zheng shook his head and frowned. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The sun was shining brightly, but there were so many people lying in the courtyard. Their breathing was steady and their vitality was normal, as if they were sleeping soundly. This scene was extremely strange. It was extremely quiet, and under the scorching sun, it made people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. These are all people from the Ye family. I know a lot of them. Yi Dingdang discovered many familiar faces and quickly said. Tang Zheng squatted down and examined a person. He discovered that the other party's body was normal and there was nothing unusual about it. Let's go and take a look elsewhere. Tang Zheng held onto Yi Dingdang's hand and no longer hid himself as he strode towards the depths of the courtyard. In the other courtyards, it was the same. There were actually many people from the Ye family lying on the ground. Yi Dingdang's face turned pale. After all, these were people that she had interacted with day and night. Most of them were subordinates of the Ye family, and some of them had even helped her before. She couldn't help but grab onto Tang Zheng's hand tightly as she raised her head and looked at him with a burning gaze. Tang Zheng felt that her palms were sweating, and immediately comforted her in a gentle voice, "Don't worry, it will definitely be fine. Their lives are not in danger, they seem to have just fallen into a deep sleep." Deep sleep? It's broad daylight, and so many people are sleeping on the ground? Yi Dingdang found it unbelievable. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a moment, then a light flashed through his mind, and he muttered to himself, "Deep sleep. That's right, there's someone who can do it." Who? Seeing that Tang Zheng had a clue, Yi Dingdang impatiently asked. Yi Meiyu. Her. Yi Dingdang had a suspicious look on her face. That's right. Her master is the Nightmare Lord. The heart's dream traceless divine ability is extraordinary. It can bring people into the dreamland. In fact, dreams are even more realistic than reality. She's the only one who can make so many people fall asleep. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to do this. He didn't cultivate the dream divine ability, so he naturally couldn't do all this. Yi Dingdang knew a thing or two about this, but she didn't expect it to be so powerful. With a heavy expression, she asked, "Will they wake up?" Yi Meiyu didn't kill them directly, so she must have some ideas. Therefore, their lives aren't in danger for the time being, but ordinary methods won't be able to wake them up. Tang Zheng said regretfully. You can't wake him up. Yi Meiyu's expression changed slightly, she was very disappointed. Cough cough. A wave of coughing broke the silence, and it was like a stone that was thrown into the surface of a lake. It immediately caused a chain reaction, and the sound rose and fell like circle after circle of ripples that surged out. What's wrong? The two of them were shocked and immediately looked over. They actually saw people standing up straight, as if they had just woken up from their sleep. Awake? The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Could it be that they had been discovered? The two of them hurriedly dodged to the side and hid behind a corridor, silently looking at this group of people. Their bodies were much stiffer, as if they were walking corpses. Their faces were expressionless, and their eyes were lifeless as they moved. It was as if a machine had been pressed on a button, and it started to operate with a clanging sound. This. Why is it so strange? It makes me shudder. Yi Dingdang shrank back and said in shock. Tang Zheng also felt a chill rise from the soles of his feet. This scene was extremely strange and inconceivable. I'll go catch one and find out what's going on. After Tang Zheng finished speaking, his figure flashed and stopped a person. Before the other party could even react, Tang Zheng had already controlled him and dragged him to the back of the corridor. What are you doing? The other party sternly asked. Yi Dingdang looked at the person with concern and asked, Don't you recognize me? I am Yi Dingdang. She recognized this person and had interacted with him many times before. But the other party did not recognize her at all. It was as if he was looking at a stranger. He bared his teeth and roared, I don't recognize you. I have to report to the master. Master, someone has broken in. He hysterically roared, and his voice resounded throughout the large courtyard. Hua! This voice caused a huge uproar. Countless pairs of eyes looked over at the same time, and the sound of footsteps quickly approached. Tang Zheng did not expect the other party to shout and not give him any chance. Yi Dingdang's expression changed slightly. This person was like a stranger, and was not the person she knew before. How did he become like this? Yi Dingdang asked blankly. He has already been controlled by Yi Dingdang and lost himself. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, pulling Yi Dingdang out of the corridor, only to see a large group of people rushing over. Many of the Ye family members were warriors, servants, and guards. When they saw Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang, their eyes turned blood red, as if they were ferocious beasts that had seen their prey. Don't hurt them. Yi Dingdang could not bear it and reminded him. Tang Zheng nodded and said, Since we've been exposed, then we might as well not hide anymore and lure Yi Meiyu out. Seeing the crowd charging at him, Tang Zheng stomped his foot on the ground. Peng! A loud sound rang out as the ground cracked inch by inch. An invisible force quickly spread out in all directions from the point of impact. Bang, 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 countless people were sent flying in all directions. Yi Meiyu, come out. Tang Zheng growled, his voice was like a large bell, quickly spreading to every courtyard of the Ye family. Crash! A figure soared into the sky from a house, breaking through the roof and bringing with it a large amount of rubble. Finally, he landed on the roof and stared at the two of them from afar. Yi Xuanji. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, he was overjoyed, he actually found the main characters so quickly. Yi Meiyu did not appear, but finding Yi Xuanji was also a gain. Yi Xuanji looked at the two of them with a complicated expression, and said coldly, You guys have barged into my Ye family again, do you really think my Ye family is a public toilet? You think you can come and go as you please? Yi Xuanji, after 3 days of separation, I have a whole new level of respect for you. To think that your Ye family would actually become like this, it's truly unexpected. Tang Zheng said meaningfully. Yi Xuanji snorted coldly, his gaze once again landing on Yi Dingdang, his expression became extremely complicated, but he could not hide his disgust and anger, and reprimanded, Yi Dingdang, you unfilial descendant, you actually have the face to come back. Yi Dingdang's pale face instantly flushed red, she stared back at Yi Xuanji unyieldingly, her aura completely different from before. Yi Xuanji was not an ordinary girl, if someone bullied her, she would fight back. This was an instinct that went deep into her bones, all of her cowardice and fear would be thrown to the back of her mind. Back then, she even dared to contradict Yi Xuanji, let alone now. What qualifications do you have to judge me like this? What did the Ye family give me? What did I ask for from the Ye family? Yi Dingdang asked indignantly. Nothing. Chapter 1197. You speak rudely, you deserve to be killed. Yi Xuanji's killing intent surged as he stared fiercely at Yi Dingdang and berated. Yi Dingdang straightened her back and stared back at Yi Xuanji without fear. Tang Zheng moved his feet slightly, blocking their line of sight, and said, Yi Xuanji, what kind of hero is it to target a girl? Why did the Ye family become like this? Yi Xuanji froze slightly, his expression fluctuating as he said, What does this have to do with you? It's not good to spread the family's dirty linen, right? Tang Zheng's eyes were like torches, he immediately revealed the mystery behind it, the entire Ye family has fallen into a deep sleep, this can't be your doing, I'm afraid it's Yi Meiyu's doing. This means that your control over the Ye family has been taken away, right? Yi Xuanji's face flushed red, he blew at his beard and glared, and refuted, Nonsense, the Ye family is mine, how can it be taken away by others? Tang Zheng stared straight at him, pointed around, and laughed mockingly. Is that so? Then explain all of this. The surrounding guards stared at Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang like tigers eyeing their prey. Yi Xuanji looked at these people, his gaze became unnatural, he snorted angrily and said, "This is my Ye family's family matter, why should I say anything to you?" Ha ha ha. What a joke, this is just an excuse for you to deceive yourself. The Ye family has completely lost control, it's just that you insist on wearing a fig leaf. Actually, no matter how your Ye family changes, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just here to ask you a question. Tang Zheng shook his head, disdainful of Yi Xuanji's ability to be stubborn, and directly stated his purpose for coming here. Yi Xuanji was startled, he had also been guessing Tang Zheng's purpose. After hearing this question, he looked at him suspiciously and asked, "What question? Where is the leader?" "What?" Seeing that Yi Xuanji seemed to have misheard, Tang Zheng repeated, "You didn't mishear. I asked you where the chief is. Don't tell me you don't know the answer." Yi Xuanji's eyes flickered, and he said without hesitation, "Of course I don't." "Humph, you're really funny. You actually came to me to ask about his whereabouts. Shouldn't you ask the officials? You're really good at being stubborn. It's useless even if you deny it. Your reaction has already told me that you definitely know the answer." Tang Zheng pressed on. "Nonsense. I advise you to leave this place quickly. Otherwise, I won't be polite anymore." Yi Xuanji knew very well that he was no match for Tang Zheng. Although he was arrogant, he didn't dare to act rashly. "What if I don't leave?" Tang Zheng crossed his arms and looked at Yi Xuanji lazily. Yi Xuanji couldn't sit still. With a whoosh, he flew down from the roof and looked at Tang Zheng from afar. For a moment, he couldn't find any words to refute. Yi Dingdang looked at this scene and her gaze finally fell on Tang Zheng. Although he looked lazy and didn't care, the strong confidence he exuded was intoxicating. "Yi Xuanji, you don't dare to speak. Then obediently tell me the answer." Tang Zheng forced. Peng peng peng. Suddenly, a series of uniform footsteps sounded. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He discovered that the guards and servants were on the move again. They all rushed towards Tang Zheng at the same time. Each and every one of them had a crazed expression. Their eyes were filled with killing intent and hatred. It was as if they wanted to skin Tang Zheng alive. "Stop!" Before Tang Zheng could react, Yi Xuanji roared and stopped a few people. However, these people acted as if they didn't see Yi Xuanji and directly rushed towards him. Eh? Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide in surprise, this scene was out of his expectations. These guards and servants were all from the Ye family, how could they fight against Yi Xuanji? Isn't this a rebellion? Yi Xuanji's face was ashen, he stared hatefully at his subordinates who were rushing over. These people used to listen to him, but ever since they were hit by Yi Meiyu's heart dream traceless spell, they seemed to have changed into a different person. They didn't listen to his orders at all, and were like puppets. This made Yi Xuanji very angry, but there was nothing he could do. Although he had repeatedly stated that the Ye family was still under his control, he knew very well what the truth was. The Ye family had indeed changed hands, and he had been completely taken over, becoming a commander without an army. His strength was not weak, but he could not compare to Yi Meiyu. The waves behind the Yangtze River pushed the waves before. He, the wave in front, was ruthlessly slapped on the beach and had to accept the scorching sun. One could imagine how it felt. Not only that, he didn't know what kind of flowery words Yi Meiyu used, but she actually bewitched Yi Ku. Yi Ku turned to Yi Meiyu, his younger sister, and disobeyed him. Yi Xuanji scratched his head and couldn't figure out why Yi Ku had changed so much. He wanted to pass down the Ye family's huge family business to him, but in the end, he betrayed him, which was equivalent to betraying the Ye family. Yi Xuanji had a deep sense of defeat, this feeling was buried deep in his heart. He cultivated day and night, hoping that one day his cultivation would surpass Yi Meiyu's again, and then completely take back the Ye family's dominance. The Ye family was his, and he had to take it back. Otherwise, if he died with grievances, how could he explain it to the Ye family's ancestors when he went to the underworld in the future? However, before he could do this, he was met with Tang Zheng's condemnation. He painstakingly tried to regain his dignity, but he did not succeed. Especially at this moment, the servants and guards ignored his existence and even attacked him. This was completely tearing off the last layer of cloth covering his shame, causing him to feel a strong sense of humiliation that penetrated deep into his bones. He couldn't help but lower his head. No one saw the sparkling tears in his eyes, which almost fell from the corner of his eyes. The servants and guards charged at him without any hesitation. Suddenly, Yi Xuanji raised his head, his eyes flashing, and growled, "Stop!" The guards acted as if they didn't hear anything, their killing intent leaked out, and a fierce killing move greeted him. "Retreat!" Yi Xuanji roared once again, but no one retreated. There were no tears in Yi Xuanji's eyes, and his gaze became extremely complicated. It was as sharp as a blade, and as hot as a scorching sun. Boom! Yi Xuanji pushed both of his hands outwards, and an invisible wave of air surged out. The shock wave was extremely terrifying, like a tsunami. How could the servants and guards be a match for him? In an instant, they were sent flying backwards. They were scattered all over the ground like spare parts. One by one, they fell to the ground and screamed miserably, but the way they looked at Yi Xuanji was even more furious, as if they were facing an enemy who killed their father. Looking at this scene, Yi Xuanji's heart ached. These were the people he had trained, but in the end, they had become his enemies. This was a joke, a huge joke. Ha 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 ha, Yi Xuanji laughed wildly, and a drop of tear actually flowed out from the corner of his eyes. Chapter 1198. Muddy old tears fell to the ground and splashed out like water. Yi Xuanji's heart was bleeding. The servants and guards fell to the ground one after another, in a mess. They had the advantage in numbers, but in the end, they were no match for Yi Xuanji. Seeing this scene, Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang were both stunned for a moment. Yi Xuanji had completely lost control of the Ye family, to the extent that he could not control his impulse to attack. What's going on? Yi Dingdang asked in confusion. He has completely lost control of the Ye family. These people have become Yi Meiyu's slaves and only listen to her orders. Tang Zheng explained. Yi Dingdang thought for a while, then said, could it be that Yi Meiyu is by her side, so she can order these people? Tang Zheng was shocked, realizing that he had overlooked a problem. Yi Meiyu had never appeared, so how did she control these people? She also did not hear anything. What's so hard about that? The inner demon's voice suddenly sounded. Tang Zheng's attention was immediately attracted by the inner demons, and he asked, you know what's going on? Of course, how could Nightmare's little trick stop me, humph? The inner demons said proudly, Nightmare's heart's dream traceless technique has many magical aspects, one of which is that it can make people fall into a dream and control others remotely. These people are obviously controlled by the heart's dream traceless technique. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that this was definitely Yi Meiyu's doing. Her heart was really big. These people's eyes are like the eyes of the caster. What they see is what the caster sees. Do you understand? The inner demons asked. Tang Zheng nodded thoughtfully, but he could not suppress the shock in his heart. Not only did Yi Meiyu control others, she had even turned their eyes into an extension of her own vision. Is there a way to break her spell? Others may not be able to do anything, but how can this little trick stop my inner demons? Tang Zheng was overjoyed and said, then hurry up and help me break this spell. Without Qi Yu's check and balance, the inner demon's attitude towards Tang Zheng had changed a lot. They didn't dare to disobey him easily. Moreover, this method of breaking the spell wasn't his core supernatural power, so he heroically agreed, this is my secret. If other people want to learn it, humph, that's wishful thinking. But you're different. Since you want to learn it, I'll teach you. Tang Zheng automatically filtered out the inner demon's boasting, but his impression of the inner demons had improved. He said, thank you. This set of spells is called the Heartbreak spell. With your intelligence, it shouldn't be difficult to learn, the inner demon explained. This set of spells was just a drop in the bucket of his spells, so it wasn't difficult to learn. Heartbreak? Yes, shatter other people's minds. Aren't these people's minds falling into a dream and being controlled? Shatter their minds and they'll naturally be free. Then wouldn't they be dead? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The inner demon snorted and said, "Do you think my inner demon's spells are so simple? If I want to kill someone, I have thousands of ways. Why would I need to use heartbreak? Heartbreak is to shatter other people's minds. It's not fatal, but it can make the person lose their mind for a period of time. What kind of threat can a person without a mind be? The nightmare spells are good, but they're all used to control normal people. Let me ask you, for a person with an abnormal mind, what use would the traceless dream spell have?" Tang Zheng nodded while thinking about the meaning of the words. In the end, he couldn't help but admit that the inner demon's words made a lot of sense. "Then hurry up and teach it to me. Listen carefully, this is the Heartbreak's chant. Understand it well." As soon as the voice fell, a light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind. A passage of words seemed to be engraved in his mind, firmly memorizing it. Tang Zheng didn't need to recite it word by word. The chant turned into a profound mystery that was branded in his mind and body. His closed eyes finally opened. Looking at the guards and servants who were charging in front of him, he pointed out with his finger and an invisible force rippled out. This force was like a spring rain, moving with the wind, spreading to the top of everyone's head. The charging movement suddenly stopped, as if their pressure points were sealed, and they couldn't move. The murderous intent in their eyes was swept away like the waves, completely disappearing. Bang bang bang. One after another, the sound of people hitting the ground rang out. The rest of the people fell to the ground one after another. Yi Xuanji suddenly raised his head. The tears in his eyes had already dried up. He looked at the people on the ground in shock. He didn't know if they were dead or alive. His eyes became fiery red again. He stared at Tang Zheng hatefully and roared, "What did you do?" He looked like he wanted to kill Tang Zheng. "You killed them. They're my Ye family's people, you." Yi Xuanji pointed at Tang Zheng with his trembling finger. He was so angry that he didn't know what to say. "I killed them." Tang Zheng pointed at his own nose and laughed, "Why would I kill them? Do you think they're dead?" Yi Xuanji was startled. He squatted down to check. Sure enough, they weren't dead, but just unconscious. "What kind of magic did you use?" Yi Xuanji looked up and stared at Tang Zheng, and asked in surprise. He had seen Tang Zheng's magic many times. The most miraculous time was when he was in the ghost realm. He walked through the gates of hell and was reborn. All of this was thanks to Tang Zheng. In the ghost realm, he saw Tang Zheng's strength. He couldn't believe that he could come and go as he pleased in another world. This made a deep impact on him. For a long time, he almost didn't dare to think of making an enemy out of Tang Zheng. As time passed, the contradiction between him and Tang Zheng became deeper and deeper. All kinds of interests led to hatred overshadowing fear. He tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart. At this moment, seeing this scene, that kind of fear once again surged out from the depths of his heart, causing his heart to turn cold. The way he looked at Tang Zheng also changed a lot. He suddenly felt a sense of melancholy. The days of martial artists seemed to have come to an end. Whether it was Tang Zheng or his granddaughter Yi Meiyu, they were all young and had risen up in a very short period of time. They had completely left these old fellows behind. The heavens seemed to have destined that martial artists had completely declined. Tang Zheng sneered, but did not say the 3 words heartbreak technique. He only looked at Yi Xuanji coldly and said, "You wouldn't know the divine abilities of a cultivator even if I told you. How do you feel seeing the Ye family reach this point?" Yi Xuanji's expression changed, his gaze wandered around the people on the ground, as if he had lost his soul. The huge family business he had created had completely changed hands, and the Ye family no longer had anything to do with him. Chapter 1199. Didn't you want to know where the leader is? Yi Xuanji's words shocked Tang Zheng. He stared at Yi Xuanji with a burning gaze and asked, "You're finally willing to tell me the truth?" The change in the Ye family had touched Yi Xuanji's heart, which was why he compromised. Looking at Yi Xuanji's dazed expression, Tang Zheng suddenly had a feeling of enlightenment, as if he could understand his thoughts. However, he would not pity him, because a pitiful person must have something to hate. Yi Xuanji could have walked on a broad path, but he was too selfish. What he wanted was too different from his own strength, which led to the current situation. All of this was his own fault. Yi Xuanji looked at Tang Zheng coldly and said, "I don't know where the leader is, but someone does." "Who?" "Yi Meiyu." Yi Xuanji clenched his teeth, and said this name with mixed feelings. In the past 20 years or so, this name was like a child to him, unable to cause many ripples. Even though Yi Meiyu was dissolute and lived a chaotic life, causing the Ye family to be humiliated, he did not feel too strongly about it. After Yi Meiyu became strong and forcefully entered the Ye family, Yi Xuanji's position was in danger, and his feelings became extremely complicated. He looked forward to the descendants of the Ye family becoming stronger, but he did not wish for it to be like this. Completely ignoring him and playing by himself, he was like an old man who did not die, extremely unnecessary. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he asked in astonishment, "You really don't know anything, you, the patriarch?" "Hee." He didn't finish his sentence, but the word hee was enough to reveal too much. The corner of Yi Xuanji's mouth twitched. His expression seemed calm, but in reality, there were too many emotions that no one knew about. "Where is Yi Meiyu?" Yi Xuanji shook his head. "These people are all his spies. If they see you, it is equivalent to her seeing you. If she knows that you want to find her, she will definitely hide. It will be extremely difficult for you to find her." Tang Zheng frowned. If that was the case, wouldn't all his efforts have been for naught? Yi Xuanji looked at Tang Zheng with a gaze full of ridicule. Seeing Tang Zheng in trouble, he felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. "You have already successfully used the heart-shattering technique. Searching for the source, how difficult is it for you to find Yi Meiyu?" the inner demon said to Tang Zheng lazily. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He knew that the inner demons had a way, and his heart calmed down. He looked at Yi Xuanji with ridicule, and said, "Do you think this is enough to stop me? Just watch. Inner demon, tell me the solution." The inner demon said, "Not only can the heart-shattering technique shatter a person's mind, it can also follow the trace of thought left in the bottom of their hearts and search for the source. Yi Meiyu can use their eyes to see you, and you can also track Yi Meiyu from their hearts." Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The heart-shattering technique actually had such a miraculous effect. Although he had learned the technique, if he did not have the guidance of the inner demons, he would not have been able to completely comprehend it in a short period of time. At this point, the inner demons no longer kept Tang Zheng in suspense, and simply told him the method of anti-tracking. Tang Zheng understood, and a line seemed to appear in front of his eyes, spreading out from the hearts of the people on the ground. More than 100 thin lines twisted into a rope, gradually growing larger, and finally appearing more and more clearly in front of Tang Zheng's eyes. The line spread into the distance. "Ding dang, let's go." Tang Zheng held Yi Dingdong's hand and jumped onto the roof. Yi Xuanji stared at this scene in a daze. He could not see the line, but Tang Zheng's sudden departure caused him to have a strange thought. Could it be that Tang Zheng found a way? Impossible. Yi Xuanji shook his head fiercely, denying this point of view, but he was still not confident in his heart. It was as if every time he concluded that it was impossible for Tang Zheng, the final result would cause him to be taken aback, as if he had been slapped in the face. "Nothing is impossible." A voice quietly sounded in his ears. Yi Xuanji's entire body trembled, like an unsheathed treasure sword. He suddenly turned around and stared at the direction of the voice with a torch-like gaze. A person was standing there unknowingly, as if he had always been hiding there. Yi Xuanji actually did not notice him, and his heart could not help but sink. However, when he saw the person's face, he felt that it was only natural. Because, this person was Granny Li, the former palace lord of Li Palace. She was once in existence that Yi Xuanji could not reach. He racked his brains to establish a connection with her and win her over. Now, the two sides were people from two different worlds. Yi Xuanji did not let down his guard at all, and said, Granny Li, why did you come to my Ye family? Ha, is this Ye family still yours? Granny Li hit the nail on the head. Yi Xuanji's face turned red, and stammered, what does this have to do with you? You don't have to be hostile to me, because I have no hostility towards you. On the contrary, I am here to help you. Granny Li said with a smile, just like a wolf grandmother. Yi Xuanji was not so easily fooled. He sneered and said, I advise you not to waste your breath and saliva. Granny Li shook her head and sighed, you have been deceived by your own grandchildren, so you don't believe in anyone. I can understand, but what path do you have now? You are the only one left, and you are powerless to change this situation. As for the Ye family, do you think you can still take it back with your own strength? This question made Yi Xuanji speechless. His heart was filled with sorrow, and his face became unnatural. Granny Li knew that she had to take the right medicine, and it had to be strong medicine. So, she continued to mercilessly attack, if you don't have anyone to help you, then you are a complete failure. Could it be that the dignified Yi Xuanji is willing to be a failure? Yi Xuanji raised his head and stared hatefully at Granny Li. Although he did not answer, his meaning was self-evident. He was not willing. Granny Li's lips curled into a smile, and the wrinkles on her face became even more strange and thought-provoking. If you sincerely submit to the High Lord, then you can take back everything you've lost. This is your chance, and it's also a chance for all martial artists. This world has completely changed. If you stubbornly stick to the old ways, then you will definitely be eliminated by history. The High Lord is at the forefront of history, an existence that creates history. Submitting to the High Lord is the general trend. Granny Li talked non-stop, and Yi Xuanji's eyes slightly fluctuated. His heart was obviously fluctuating, but no one could guess his true thoughts. Not only you, but other cultivators will also submit to the High Lord, because this is a chance for us cultivators. Haven't you always wanted to increase your strength? Aren't you getting more and more powerless now? Because this society has already been promoted to a great world, and the world's spiritual energy has undergone earth-shaking changes. It is the most beneficial for cultivators to cultivate, and the space for cultivators to survive will be rapidly compressed. If you do not resist, then you will die without a doubt. Yi Xuanji looked at Granny Li in surprise. He did not expect her to say such words. This was completely out of his expectations. Resist? Cultivators are so powerful, how can you resist? I think you are just running out of tricks, just wishful thinking. Yi Xuanji snorted disdainfully. He did not think that Granny Li's words had any value. They were just words to confuse people. Granny Li's eyes widened, staring straight at Yi Xuanji. She regretfully shook her head and said, you are really scared out of your wits. The High Lord is really wrong. Looking for you is even less valuable than looking for an ordinary person. Your fighting spirit has already disappeared, and in the future when you go to the underworld, you will not have the face to see your Ye family's ancestors. Hearing the words ancestors, Yi Xuanji's face became particularly ugly. His face twisted, and his eyes emitted intense sparks. He hatefully glared at Granny Li and said, do you dare to say that again? Granny Li looked at him with disdain and said, not to mention once, even if I say it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, why wouldn't I dare? In the future, you will not have the face to see your Ye family's ancestors. You are an unfilial descendant, and the Ye family will decline in your hands, and even disappear from this world. I will kill you. Yi Xuanji went berserk. Like an angry lion, he leaped and attacked Granny Li. Granny Li raised her walking stick and quickly pointed it at Yi Xuanji. How could Yi Xuanji be Granny Li's opponent? He panicked and the situation immediately changed. After a few moves, Yi Xuanji was immediately held by the walking stick at his throat, unable to move. Yi Xuanji was ashamed and angry at the same time. He hatefully glared at Granny Li and said, "If you want to kill me, then do as you please. If I even frown, then I am not Yi Xuanji." Humph, you have some courage. That means you are not hopeless. Granny Li said, "Although I think you are useless, but since the High Lord wants me to take you, then I will spare your life for now." Granny Li said, "You are not afraid of death, are you afraid to see the High Lord?" I, Yi Xuanji, have nothing to be afraid of." Yi Xuanji raised his head, incomparably proud. Granny Li looked at him expressionlessly and said, "Let's go." The two leaped and left the Ye family's courtyard house. Not long after, the two arrived at a secluded cliff. The mountain wind was biting cold, whistling through the air. A person stood proudly at the edge of the cliff. The mountain wind blew against his body. He was like a small boat in the middle of the waves. No matter how the wind and rain battered him, he remained firm and unwavering. Yi Xuanji's pupils constricted as he stared at the back of this proud and aloof figure. He seemed to be one with the environment, as if the cliff was him and he was the cliff. There was an indescribable and mysterious feeling. "High Lord." Granny Li walked in front of the person and respectfully bowed, "I have brought Yi Xuanji." Ji Wuxiang turned around and looked at Yi Xuanji with a pair of eyes that were neither sad nor happy. His eyes were calm like an ancient well. No one could guess what he was thinking, but there was an inexplicable attraction. Yi Xuanji looked at Ji Wuxiang with a complicated expression. Of course, he knew that Ji Wuxiang, who had been doing well in the capital, was the High Lord. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, his mood was particularly complicated. "Yi Xuanji, are you curious as to why I am looking for you?" Ji Wuxiang asked. Yi Xuanji said, "No matter what your goal is, I will not let you succeed." Chapter 1200. Ji Wuxiang calmly looked at Yi Xuanji and said, "At least your self-confidence has not been destroyed." Yi Xuanji raised his head like a proud tiger. Even though he was old, his aura did not diminish. "You don't believe what Granny Li said to you, right? You don't believe that I have the ability to fight against cultivators?" Before Granny Li could report, Ji Wuxiang had already exposed Yi Xuanji's thoughts. From this, it could be seen that Ji Wuxiang was extraordinary. Yi Xuanji's expression suddenly changed. He stubbornly snorted and refused to comment. "Haven't you always wanted to increase your cultivation? You are still quite a distance away from the martial king realm. I can help you fulfill your wish," Ji Wuxiang said mysteriously. Yi Xuanji thought to himself, "You know what my wish is," but before he could say anything, Ji Wuxiang made a grabbing motion with his hand and a terrifying force enveloped Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji roared, "What are you doing?" No one answered him. His body quickly flew toward Ji Wuxiang and fell into Ji Wuxiang's big hand. A big hand firmly grabbed his head, making him unable to move. Yi Xuanji used all his strength to try and break free. But suddenly, his body stiffened and he gave up resisting. Because, a huge amount of inner strength poured into him from the top of his head. Wisdom imbuing. This was the first thought that popped into his mind. Ji Wuxiang was actually pouring inner strength into him to increase his cultivation. No matter how stupid Yi Xuanji was, he knew what Ji Wuxiang was doing. This was a critical moment. If he rashly resisted, it would be a great danger for him. Moreover, this was a rare opportunity. He had a premonition that his strength would increase by leaps and bounds, reaching the realm that he had always dreamed of. Before, he doubted Ji Wuxiang's strength. But at this moment, he did not want to doubt his strength. Because, he was looking forward to this change. No matter how much he disliked Ji Wuxiang in the past, this disgust and hostility was now slowly disappearing. Boom! A loud sound came from Yi Xuanji's body. It was like a thunderclap, but also like a dam bursting, causing a flood to flow for thousands of miles. It rumbled with great momentum. This was a sign that his inner strength had broken through the layers of shackles and completely connected with Yi Xuanji's body and mind. His eyes suddenly widened and flickered with a bright light. His aura changed greatly and became extremely terrifying. Granny Li's eyes lit up as she looked at Ji Wuxiang. Then, she looked at Yi Xuanji with disdain. Yi Xuanji's face was filled with both shock and joy. She thought to herself, weren't you always so arrogant? Now you know how powerful the High Lord is. Yi Xuanji indeed knew how powerful Ji Wuxiang was, and he was deeply shocked. He could clearly feel the changes in his power. The steady flow of inner strength through every single one of his meridians made him feel an unprecedented power. His heart surged with emotion. Roar! He raised his head to the sky and let out a roar. His roar soared into the sky and shook the surroundings. Ji Wuxiang let go of his hand, took a step back, and silently looked at Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji's emotions calmed down bit by bit, the light in his eyes gradually converged, and his entire aura underwent an earth-shattering change. Yi Xuanji looked at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze. Their eyes met, and many complicated emotions intertwined in each other's eyes. Bang! A knee heavily hit the ground. The hard rock seemed to have been hit by a bullet as it flew in all directions, creating a large crater. Yi Xuanji knelt down on one knee, lowered his head towards Ji Wuxiang, and said respectfully, from today onwards, Yi Xuanji will be at the High Lord's disposal. He was completely convinced by Ji Wuxiang. This time, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds, and he had broken through to the Martial King realm in one fell swoop. This was a realm that he had dreamed of, but in the past, he did not even dare to think about it. One must know that back then, it was almost impossible for him to break through to the Great Master realm. It was only because of Tang Zheng's appearance that he had the opportunity to break through. From then on, the progress of his cultivation had been extremely slow. He had racked his brains, but in the end, he had been defeated by Yi Meiyu. This had dealt an even heavier blow to his confidence. This was like a demonic barrier that firmly occupied his heart. He understood very well that with this demonic barrier, his cultivation would stop moving forward, and it would be difficult for him to advance in the slightest. He never thought that Ji Wuxiang would be able to help him break through to the Martial King realm so easily. What kind of power was this? With his understanding, he was simply unable to think of a reasonable explanation. This was equivalent to the methods of an immortal, and was not the slightest bit weaker than a cultivator. He finally believed Grandma Li's words. The High Lord really had the potential and strength to fight against cultivators. Yi Xuanji's ambition that had been beaten down time and time again awakened, and his unwillingness to accept this had once again sprouted. He wanted to take back everything that belonged to him, clean up the family, and deal with the unfilial descendants of the Ye family. In the future, when he went to the underworld, he could also explain himself to the ancestors of the Ye family. Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with satisfaction, and said, "Get up. Follow me, and I will not treat you unfairly. What you have lost, I will take back for you." Yi Xuanji nodded his head heavily, without the slightest doubt. Grandma Li said, "Now you know what I said was true, right?" Yi Xuanji earnestly said, "It was this Yi who was stupid, and had eyes but failed to see. I misunderstood Grandma Li's painstaking efforts. From now on, you better listen to the High Lord's orders, and not let the High Lord's painstaking efforts go to waste," Grandma Li warned. Yi Xuanji nodded, and after pondering for a while, he curiously asked, "High Lord, this Yi has something that I don't understand. How can my cultivation advance by leaps and bounds?" "Of course it's because the High Lord's cultivation is profound, that's why you can do this," Grandma Li rushed to say. This reason was not enough to convince Yi Xuanji, and it could be seen from his expression. Ji Wuxiang faintly smiled, pointed to the sky, and asked, "What do you see?" Yi Xuanji looked up at the sky. The blue sky stretched as far as the eye could see, and there were only a few clouds, and nothing else. He blankly shook his head, "Sky." Ji Wuxiang was obviously not satisfied with this answer, and Yi Xuanji also knew this, but he really did not know what answer Ji Wuxiang wanted, so he could only answer what he saw. "What else?" "Clouds." "What else?" Yi Xuanji pondered for a while, and blankly shook his head. Ji Wuxiang did not find it strange, and said, "You only see the sky and clouds, but what I see is through this boundless sky, I see the stars. The power of the stars is channeled into a person's body, and that's why your cultivation advances by leaps and bounds." Star power? Yi Xuanji asked in astonishment. "You know that cultivators need to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to increase their cultivation, right?" Ji Wuxiang asked. Yi Xuanji nodded. This was a well-known fact. We cultivators often rely on cultivating our inner strength to increase our cultivation. One is external, one is internal, so it's not hard to understand why cultivators often suppress cultivators. Cultivators take in external things for their own use, and the speed at which they increase their cultivation is strange, so we cultivators must change this situation. If cultivators can take in external things, why can't we take in external things for our own use? Yi Xuanji was shocked. Could it be the power of the stars? Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with admiration, and said, "The power of the stars is of a higher level than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. When we cultivators absorb the power of the stars for our own use, our cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds." Really? Yi Xuanji opened his eyes wide. He felt that this was inconceivable. There was actually such a good thing in this world. Of course it's true, just now was the best proof. I took in the power of the stars for you to use, and enlightened you. Yi Xuanji sank into silence, carefully reflecting on what he just experienced. He also checked the inner strength in his body, and it was indeed much better than before. This feeling made him immersed in it, and he could not help but ask, "Then how can I maintain this situation and continue to absorb the power of the stars?" He knew that this was the key, as the power of the stars would have a crucial effect on his cultivation in the future. Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with praise, as a smart person really quickly grasped the key point. "Only I can take in the power of the stars, but I will find a way to let the cultivators by my side also enjoy this kind of treatment," Ji Wuxiang said. "So you're saying that I don't have a good method right now, and I can only rely on you to take in the power of the stars?" Ji Wuxiang nodded. In fact, he really did not find an effective method for the others, and for him to control the heavens' chess, taking in the power of the stars was very easy, as if it was just a thought. At this time, it was time to gather power, and firmly gather it by his side. He also could not let these people freely absorb the power of the stars, and if they wanted to rely on the power of the stars to increase their cultivation, then they must follow by his side, and over time, these people's loyalty and reverence towards him would greatly increase. At that time, he was confident that he would have found a way for all the cultivators to freely absorb the power of the stars, and all the cultivators would be loyal to him, and that would be the time for him to truly make his move. With the power of the heavens' chess and the cultivators that were already strong, he was confident that he could fight against the cultivators, and fight for supremacy under the heavens. No matter who it was, they would not be his opponent. "Lord, the cultivators have the advantage in numbers, we might not be their opponent." Yi Xuanji already understood Ji Wuxiang's ambition, and reminded him worriedly. Ji Wuxiang said unconcernedly, "In this world, do you think there are more cultivators, or more cultivators?" "There are more cultivators." Yi Xuanji gave the answer without hesitation. After all, the cultivators had been expelled for hundreds of years, and in these hundreds of years, it was the cultivators who occupied the dominant position. Although they were not as strong as the cultivators, the number of cultivators was huge, and their numbers were definitely in the majority. So, as long as we unite these cultivators, and expel the cultivators again, it will not be a fantasy, a castle in the air. Ji Wuxiang concluded. Hearing these words, Yi Xuanji's blood boiled. He, who had long passed the hot-blooded years, felt as if he had returned to his youth, and was extremely excited. "Come and meet the people with the same ideals." Ji Wuxiang pointed at the cliff in the distance, and Yi Xuanji suddenly realized that there were many people sitting cross-legged on the cliff, obviously cultivating, and there were even familiar figures among them. "This is?" Yi Xuanji asked in shock. Chapter 1201. Yi Xuanji looked at these smart people, and actually found a familiar figure among them. He subconsciously exclaimed, "Long Xianyuan." The patriarch of the Long family in Dianan, this family had been reduced to a marginal power because of their repeated clashes with Tang Zheng. Their influence was limited to Dianan, and their influence in the country was almost negligible. The few great families in the capital were in imminent danger. How could they have the mood to care about the Long family in Dianan? Yi Xuanji never thought that he would see Long Xianyuan here. Ji Wuxiang had actually subdued him, and Yi Xuanji had a rough impression of many of the other people's faces. Although they were not as powerful as the great families, they were still famous figures in the martial arts world. At this moment, Yi Xuanji understood that Ji Wuxiang was not acting on a whim, but had planned for a long time and made sufficient preparations. Ji Wuxiang would definitely recruit other warriors, and in the future, all warriors would be under Ji Wuxiang's rule to fight against cultivators. What kind of scene would that be? Just thinking about it made Yi Xuanji feel his blood boil and his fighting spirit soar. Ji Wuxiang patted Yi Xuanji's shoulder. From now on, under your feet will be a new world that belongs to us warriors, look forward to it. Tang Zheng followed the thin line that was invisible to the naked eye and quickly chased after it. Not long after, he actually chased after it outside the capital. This line stretched for thousands of miles, as if it had no end. This line actually showed signs of weakening, causing Tang Zheng to immediately frown. Yi Dingdang looked at him in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" Tang Zheng fell into silence, but in his heart, he asked the inner demons, "Why is this line getting weaker and weaker? This Ming Yi Meiyu is too far away from us. If it wasn't too far away, we would have been able to find her very quickly by following this line." The tracking effect of the heartbreak technique is also limited, it is not omnipotent. The inner demons explained regretfully. Then wouldn't we have worked for nothing? That might not be the case. At least for now, we can follow them, the inner demons suggested. Tang Zheng pondered for a while. He didn't want to give up this great opportunity. He held Yi Dingdang's hand and said, "Dingdang, let's speed up." Then, she felt herself flying like a gust of wind. With a whoosh, she swept up from the ground and rushed into the distance. At this moment, he was walking as if he was flying. With a tap of his toes, he leaped dozens of meters into the air. In the blink of an eye, he had moved an extremely long distance. He was only slightly slower than sword flight. Yi Dingdang felt the wind blow past her ears. At first, she felt her heart palpitate. Then, hot blood rushed out of her heart and flowed to all her blood vessels, limbs, and bones. In an instant, it filled her entire body. She snuggled tightly in Tang Zheng's arms, her face flushed with excitement. The two of them traveled a long distance, crossing mountains and crossing roads. The line was getting weaker and weaker, as if it was about to disappear without a trace. Suddenly, a mountain peak stood proudly in front of them. This mountain peak was majestic and magnificent. It made people involuntarily sigh at the uncanny workmanship of nature. Why does this mountain peak feel so strange? Yi Dingdang stared at the mountain peak in a daze and muttered to herself. What's so strange about it? Tang Zheng did not understand. Ah, this is actually... Yi Dingdang cried out in surprise. Her beautiful face was flushed red. She covered her cheeks, but her eyes were staring at the mountain peak through the gaps between her fingers. Tang Zheng was attracted by Yi Dingdang's reaction. He stared at the mountain peak without blinking. Suddenly, he widened his eyes in realization and said, "So it's this thing." He finally understood why Yi Dingdang was so shy. It was because this mountain peak was too similar to a man's little brother. It was just that it was covered by dense trees, so it was not so obvious. But if one looked closely for a few minutes, they would discover the mystery. This is nothing to be surprised about. There are many such mountains all over the country, and many of them were carved by the ancient people. This is a kind of life totem worship, which was quite popular in the ancient times. Tang Zheng had seen reports on this before, so he tirelessly explained. Yi Dingdang slowly moved her hands away and said, "The ancient people were really too much. They actually worshipped that." Tang Zheng chuckled and said, "We can't use the eyes of modern people to figure out the thoughts of the ancient people. That was something that happened naturally in the background of that era. There's nothing to be surprised about. Then this mountain peak is also man-made? Yi Dingdang suppressed her shyness and asked curiously. No. The inner demon's voice was the first to answer Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned and asked, how do you know? Don't forget, I am the ancient people you are talking about. The life totem worship has been around since ancient times. In ancient times, there was a lack of population. Every tribe hoped to have a prosperous population. So, many people are believers of the life totem worship. The inner demons continued to explain. Many tribes spend a lot of manpower to carve the life totem, just like this mountain peak in front of you. But this is completely different from a naturally formed life totem. A naturally formed life totem is a resource that many tribes would not hesitate to start a war to obtain. For example, this mountain peak in front of you. In ancient times, it was definitely a life totem that many tribes fought over. Tang Zheng looked pensive as he stared at the mountain peak. It was hard to imagine that the ancient people would worship this thing so much that they would even start a war. What's the benefit of this life totem worship? The ancient people couldn't be fools, right? Why would they fight over something useless? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Others might look down on the ancient people, but Tang Zheng had met too many of them. He could not help but sigh that the ancient people were not as ignorant as modern people thought. The ancient people's wisdom was not inferior to modern people. If one really looked at the ancient people, they would be complete idiots. So, the ancient people would definitely not worship the life totem for no reason. There were no benefits. The inner demons were not stingy with their praise and said, you are much smarter than the others. You immediately found the key. The life totem worship is of course useful. It can gather the pure yang energy between heaven and earth and strengthen the tribe's males. This is beneficial to the inheritance of life. The man-made life totem requires a corresponding array to have this effect. The natural life totem is formed by nature. The effect of gathering the pure yang energy between heaven and earth is very different. Tang Zheng was shocked. He was too familiar with the pure yang energy. Ever since Tian Chanzi lived in his body, the term pure yang energy often circled in his mind. He had the 9 yang saint body. His pure yang energy far exceeded that of ordinary people. If he did not have enough pure yin energy to balance it, his life would end when he was 20 years old. The pure yang energy would completely erupt, causing his body to explode and die. Tang Zheng's cultivation grew stronger day by day, and his pure yang energy increased day by day. However, he had many women by his side. For the time being, he had enough pure yin energy to balance the pure yang energy. So, he was able to escape disaster time and time again. Now, he was not worried about the pure yang energy. This was because he was confident that he could suppress it. After listening to the inner demon's introduction, his eyes changed slightly as he looked at the mountain peak and said, then the pure yang energy on this mountain peak is very strong? Of course, this is a life totem that has gathered pure yang energy for countless years. The pure yang energy contained within it is immeasurable. You can go and investigate. The residents around this mountain peak are definitely flourishing. The inner demons was full of confidence. The inner demon's words were indeed accurate. The residents around this mountain peak had always been flourishing, especially in ancient times, where many families gathered. However, in recent years, due to urbanization, they did not want to have children like in ancient times. Therefore, the population gradually decreased. Tang Zheng was deep in thought, looking at the weak line that extended towards the mountain peak. He was almost certain that Yi Meiyu was on this mountain peak. Yi Meiyu had come all the way to this mountain peak. She was definitely not on a sightseeing trip, she definitely had a purpose. He had accidentally discovered this clue, so he had to investigate it. As for the pure yang energy, Tang Zheng frowned and thought for a while, ignoring this problem. Are you worried that this mountain peak will affect your 9 yang saint body? The inner demons immediately saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts and asked straightforwardly. Yes. You don't have to worry at all. Although the pure yang energy contained within the life totem is extremely powerful, its effects on the human body are accumulated over time. It's not like you're going to live there for a long time, so how much of an impact will it have on you? The inner demons asked. This question made Tang Zheng's heart completely at ease. He resolutely decided, alright, let's go up the mountain and investigate. Yi Dingdang looked at him in surprise. Is there a problem with going up? Yi Dingdang understood Tang Zheng very well. From his reaction just now, she could tell that there was definitely a problem. Tang Zheng smiled and held her hand tightly. He comforted her, don't worry, it's fine. The pure yang energy contained within this mountain peak is extremely strong, but it won't have much of an effect on me. Pure yang energy? Yi Dingdang was shocked. She was especially sensitive to this word because it concerned Tang Zheng's life. Seeing that Tang Zheng wasn't worried, she let out a sigh of relief. She held his hand, with me here, even if the pure yang energy causes trouble, I can still adjust your pure yang energy. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and looked at her gently. If you want to adjust my pure yang energy, you'll have plenty of opportunities after we return. Annoying. Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes at him in a flirtatious manner. Tang Zheng's head shook. He quickly suppressed his impulse and said, let's go up the mountain. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. They stepped on the towering treetops and flew towards the peak of the mountain, leaving behind only two afterimages. Whoosh! The two of them stopped at the same time and hid themselves in a treetop. The dense foliage covered the two of them and prevented them from being discovered. Holding his breath, he looked over. On the peak of the mountain, there were many people gathered. They stood around the peak with serious expressions. Among them, there were two familiar figures that immediately attracted Tang Zheng's gaze. Chapter 1202. Tang Zheng stared fixedly at the two familiar faces in the distance. He had expected Yi Meiyu to be at the peak of the mountain, but he did not expect Lu Wuxin to be there as well. Ever since they parted ways at Heaven Mountain, the two of them had not seen each other. Their appearance on the mountain peak of the life totem caused Tang Zheng to immediately become vigilant. Who is that person beside Yi Meiyu? Yi Dingdang had never seen Lu Wuxin before, but she had discovered that she was extraordinary, so she asked curiously. Lu Wuxin. Yi Dingdang was shocked. He is Lu Wuxin. She had heard a lot about the confrontation between Lu Wuxin and Tang Zheng, so she knew that he was not a good person. She asked worriedly, what are they doing here? Tang Zheng said thoughtfully, this mountain is one of the ancient life totems, and Lu Wuxin is from the ancient era. He must have some unknown scheme. Is the life totem really that magical? Yi Dingdang was very curious after hearing Tang Zheng's brief introduction. Tang Zheng did not doubt the inner demon's words, so he nodded and said, perhaps it is even more magical than we imagined. With that, he shut his mouth and asked the inner demons in his heart, can you tell what they want to do? The inner demons was silent for a moment, then said, who am I? How can these people hide their insignificant skills from my eyes? After all, the inner demons were experts who fought with the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu, and the two of them were unable to do anything to him. His knowledge and insight were naturally unquestionable. Tang Zheng was convinced and asked, since that's the case, then tell me what they are doing. They are collecting pure yang energy. Collecting pure yang energy? Tang Zheng was afraid of pure yang energy, but these people actually wanted to collect it. There must be something wrong with this, and the other party's scheme was definitely not simple. What's the use of this? Pure yang energy is a hidden danger to you, but it is a good thing for many people. Ordinary people say that men need masculine energy, and pure yang energy can increase a man's masculine energy. Huh? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. Could it be that these people just wanted to be more masculine? That's impossible. He immediately denied this absurd guess and asked, what else? The inner demons pondered for a long time before asking, do you still remember the soul of the golden crow that you shot? Tang Zheng nodded. Of course he remembered. The soul of the golden crow nurtures a lot of pure yang energy. That's why the golden crow can transform into a sun and emit blazing heat. Your shooting sun arrow struck the soul of the golden crow, causing it to disintegrate. It's not easy for these scattered souls of the golden crow to gather again. It's very time-consuming. However, if a large amount of pure yang energy is injected into it, it can greatly shorten the time it takes for the soul of the golden crow to gather again. What's the secret behind this? Pure yang energy is like a magnet, and the soul of the golden crow is like an iron nail. Using pure yang energy to absorb the incomplete soul of the golden crow will result in twice the result with half the effort. Do you understand? Tang Zheng suddenly realized that this metaphor was very vivid. The inner demons were quite up to date with the times. However, this news shocked him. The soul of the golden crow could actually gather again in a very short time. Didn't that mean that there would be another 10 suns illuminating sky? Wouldn't this world be in danger of being destroyed again? No, he definitely couldn't let them succeed. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and directly rejected this idea. His attitude was firm as he asked, "Inner demons, I know you have many ways. Do you have any way to destroy their plans?" Of course there is a way to destroy their plan to gather pure yang energy. However, there is one thing. In this world, there is more than one life totem. You have to destroy as many of their actions as possible before you can effectively stop them. The inner demons analyzed logically. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Since there was a way, that was good. In this world, there are a total of 8 naturally formed life totems, and our focus is on these 8. The other man-made life totems are not a concern, because in the long river of history, the formations of these man-made life totems have often collapsed, and they have lost the ability to absorb pure yang energy over time. Do you know where these 8 life totems are? The inner demons laughed confidently, "Ha ha ha, of course I know. How could this be hidden from me?" Hearing that, Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. If he were to search around like a headless fly, it would be too troublesome. It would be more efficient to target and stop the enemy. These people's strength is extraordinary. Ding dang, be careful later, don't get too far away from me. Yi Meiyu is no longer the same as before, you can only use your wits and not your strength. Tang Zheng warned. Yi Dingdang stared fixedly at Yi Meiyu. The two of them had a grudge for a long time. Back then, when Yi Dingdang was still a high school student, the assassination attempt was led by Yi Dingdang. Later on, it was left unsettled, but Yi Dingdang did not forget this grudge. New grudges and old grudges, this time, he had to settle them all. Yi Dingdang also understood the difference between him and Yi Meiyu. In the past, Yi Dingdang was able to crush Yi Meiyu in all aspects, but now, because of the nightmare, Yi Meiyu's strength had increased greatly. She had already soared into the sky and reached the nascent soul stage, far surpassing Yi Dingdang's cultivation of the 9th stage of the innate stage. The difference in strength between the two sides was like heaven and earth, but Yi Dingdang was not afraid at all. The stronger the enemy, the stronger the fighting spirit in her heart. Seeing the gap between the two sides, Yi Dingdang was not discouraged. Her cultivation speed was extremely fast, and she understood that this had a lot to do with Tang Zheng. After the two of them were in harmony, her cultivation would improve. Especially after accumulating for a long time, this kind of improvement was especially obvious. Therefore, Yi Dingdang's current cultivation had already surpassed her parents, Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang. If it was in the past, Yi Dingdang would never have dared to dream that such a day would come so quickly. But when this day came, she did not cheer. Instead, she calmly accepted all of this. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang were also very happy, and in private, they praised their daughter a lot. The two of them agreed on a general strategy and quietly jumped down from the treetops, landing on the mountain peak. The bare mountain peak was not as lush as the vegetation at the foot of the mountain. When the two of them appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of many people. Among them was Yi Meiyu. She looked at Tang Zheng in shock. She had used her heart's dream traceless spell to see Tang Zheng causing a ruckus in the Ye family and ruining her plan. She was furious, but she did not expect the other party to appear in front of them so quickly. How did he find them? In addition, how did he break her heart's dream traceless spell? Yi Meiyu had a stomach full of questions. She glared at Tang Zheng hatefully, gritted her teeth and said, Tang Zheng, Yi Dingdang, you guys sure have guts, you actually dared to deliver yourself to my doorstep. Do you not want to live anymore? Yi Meiyu, you colluded with outsiders and controlled so many innocent people in the Ye family, making them live like puppets. Your thoughts are too vicious. For the sake of those innocent people, we absolutely cannot let you succeed. Yi Dingdang's question was powerful and moving. Yi Meiyu scoffed and laughed sinisterly in disdain. Ha ha ha, Yi Dingdang, you're dreaming too much. Do you still want to be the so-called envoy of justice? You don't have the strength, so you're not worthy. Hearing Yi Meiyu's unbearable words, Tang Zheng's face changed, and he roared, Yi Meiyu, then see if I'm worthy or not. With that said, he rushed in front of Yi Meiyu. Yi Meiyu retreated in panic, and the other old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor all launched ferocious attacks at Tang Zheng. All kinds of magic treasure flew in the air, dazzling, revealing their killing intent. Yi Meiyu quickly stopped retreating. She had already retreated to the edge of the cliff and had nowhere to retreat to. Behind her was a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet high. Tang Zheng snorted, and took out the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow. With a buzzing sound, the bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow seemed to have eyes. With a few puffs, the two enemies at the front fell to the ground and died. Tang Zheng did not show any mercy. It was clean and tidy. The killing intent was shocking. Lu Wuxin held a crystal-clear jade bottle in her hand and saw Tang Zheng's arrival, but she remained indifferent. She chanted and activated a spell, causing the jade bottle to shine brightly. Boom! With a loud sound in the sky, the jade bottle flew up and floated upside down above the mountain peak. As the light flickered, a huge amount of energy was sucked into the jade bottle from the mountain peak. Tang Zheng subconsciously stopped in his tracks and raised his head to look at the jade bottle. He was extremely familiar with this energy. It was as if he was born with it, because this energy was the pure yang force. This jade bottle was actually absorbing the powerful pure yang force contained within the life totem. The pure yang force in the mountain peak was completely mobilized, peeling off every blade of grass and tree on the mountain peak and flying towards the jade bottle. Stop! Tang Zheng shouted. No one responded. Instead, it was Lu Wuxin who looked at him with disdain and said, Tang Zheng, you've ruined my plans time and time again. This time, you don't have any other helpers. Even the heavens won't help you. I want to see who can save you. Lu Wuxin's cultivation recovered rapidly. Before, there was still a gap between her and Tang Zheng, but now her strength was no weaker than Tang Zheng's. That was why she ignored Tang Zheng's attack and focused on activating her spell to absorb the pure yang force. Tang Zheng did not comment. Your plan has been completely exposed. You want to absorb the pure yang force? No way. Lu Wuxin's expression changed slightly, and he asked, you keep saying that you know my plan. What exactly is my plan? This plan was the result of her discussion with Mo Xie. Ever since Mo Xie saw the scene under the Tree of Life, he had completely changed his plan. Originally, he wanted to gradually gather the soul of the Golden Crow and then revive the Yellow Emperor. However, the appearance of Azura and Chiyu gave Mo Xie a great sense of pressure and urgency. Time waited for no one, and he simply did not have the time to do it step by step. Chapter 1203. Only Lu Wuxin and Mo Xie knew about this plan. The others, including Yi Meiyu, only knew a little about it and did not know the details. They only acted according to their orders. Tang Zheng was not a roundworm in their stomach, so how could he know about this plan? Lu Wuxin thought that Tang Zheng was deliberately exaggerating and wanted to trick her, so she took the initiative to say it out loud. Lu Wuxin looked at Tang Zheng with disdain and asked repeatedly, why are you speechless? Didn't you say you knew about my plan? What exactly is my plan? Looking at Lu Wuxin's ugly behavior, Tang Zheng shook his head. Lu Wuxin was too arrogant and overconfident. She did not know that Tang Zheng had a know-it-all inner demons hidden in his body and saw through their plan at a glance. You want to absorb the pure yang energy contained in the life totem and then use it to gather the soul of the golden crow, so as to revive the Yellow Emperor. Tang Zheng talked endlessly. Lu Wuxin's disdainful expression suddenly froze as he stared at Tang Zheng in disbelief, as if he was wondering how Tang Zheng could know so clearly. Hearing this, the others also looked at Lu Wuxin. These former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor did not know the details, but from Lu Wuxin's change of expression, they immediately understood that Tang Zheng had guessed correctly. Tang Zheng looked at Lu Wuxin with a faint smile and asked, "Do you want me to continue?" Lu Wuxin shouted hysterically, "Where did you learn all this from?" "It seems that I guessed correctly," Tang Zheng said with a smile. Of course, he would not reveal his hidden trump card, the inner demons. This made Lu Wuxin unable to figure out. The way she looked at Tang Zheng changed again and again, but in the end, there were not many clues. No matter how you found out about my plan, what's the use? Can you stop it? This is an irresistible trend. Anyone who tries to stop us will die. Lu Wuxin's face revealed a fervent expression. You are quite confident, but I want to tell you, I want to completely destroy your plan. Tang Zheng's voice was loud and clear, and he was also extremely confident. Lu Wuxin raised his head and laughed maniacally, saying disdainfully, "Arrogant words. I'll kill you first and let you know the consequences of your arrogance." Kill. A sharp battle cry pierced through the sky like a sharp knife tearing through the air, trying to tear apart Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng's two fingers gently pinched the bowstring, and when his fingers loosened, the heaven-shocking bow that did not have any sun-shooting arrows shot out an invisible force, tearing the incoming sound wave into pieces. The others tried to besiege Tang Zheng, but found that Tang Zheng had already passed through them and arrived in front of Lu Wuxin. Heartless Willow. Lu Wuxin let out a low roar. Her coarse hands trembled and the heartless willow glowed in green light. Willow branches grew crazily and swept towards Tang Zheng. Break! Tang Zheng roared, and the sun-shooting arrow flew out from the heaven-shocking bow, breaking the willow branch at its waist. However, before the willow branch could land on the ground, a new willow branch grew out, and instantly flew in front of Tang Zheng. In the next second, it seemed like it was going to wrap him up like a big dumpling. Tang Zheng exclaimed. The willow branches grew much faster than before, which made up for Lu Wuxin's shortcomings. No wonder she was so confident. It turned out that her power had increased greatly, and the attack of the heartless willow had also risen to a new level. What's the use of that? Tang Zheng was not afraid at all. He had defeated Lu Wuxin several times before, and although Lu Wuxin's aura was even stronger this time, causing him to be unfathomable, he still had absolute confidence. Sun-shooting arrow, split into 9, break. With a thought from Tang Zheng, after giving the order, the sun-shooting arrow quickly split into 9 sun-shooting arrows. This was the magical aspect of the sun-shooting arrow. Not only could it combine 9 arrows into one, it could also split into 9, with many different attacking methods. The 9 sun-shooting arrows circled in the air and shot down from 9 different directions. Puff puff puff. A series of piercing sounds rang out. Not only the willow branch, even the heartless willow had a small hole pierced through it. The green light emitted by the heartless willow instantly dissipated by a lot. This scene caused Lu Wuxin to fly into a rage, his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He stared at Tang Zheng hatefully, and roared, "You dare to hurt my heartless willow." Tang Zheng snorted coldly, "Not only will I hurt your heartless willow, I will not even let your people off." Killing intent surged, causing people to feel deep veneration. The 9 sun-shooting arrows understood Tang Zheng's intention and quickly shot towards Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin flew into a rage. "You really think you can hurt me?" Lu Wuxin pointed his finger at the heartless willow, a drop of dark red blood dripping from the tip of his finger, quickly merging into the heartless willow. In an instant, the heartless willow shone brightly, revealing a demonic red color. The heartless willow crazily grew like many pythons. It was not just one willow branch, but more than 10 willow branches. They all rolled towards Tang Zheng, giving off an imposing aura that made people tremble in fear. Tang Zheng's face sank, realizing that this attack was more than twice as powerful as before, but he was not to be trifled with. He recalled the sun shooting arrow, knocked it, and firmly placed it on the bowstring. Whoosh! The sound of the air being torn apart suddenly rang out, forming a conspicuous ripple. The heartless willow met the attack head-on, tearing the air and letting out a series of sharp hissing sounds, like the hissing of a poisonous snake. Bang! The sun-shooting arrow was the first to break a willow branch, but its attack did not slow down. 3 more willow branches were cut in half, but the other willow branches had already entangled the sun-shooting arrow, causing its attack to come to an abrupt halt. With the sun-shooting arrow trapped, Tang Zheng felt as if his hands and feet were bound, his breathing involuntarily quickened. Lu Wuxin laughed sinisterly. Tang Zheng, the heartless willow was fed with my blood, and its mind is connected to mine. Do you really think it only has that little attack power? You underestimate me too much. Tang Zheng, don't underestimate Lu Wuxin. Back then, he was a Mahayana realm cultivator, but now that he has just been reborn, his strength has been depleted, and he's only in the apotheosis realm. His heartless willow is very strange, and many people have suffered great losses back then. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become the #1 female general under the Yellow Emperor. The inner demons warned. He had a close relationship with Tang Zheng, so of course he did not want to see him lose. Tang Zheng did not comment, but his understanding of Lu Wuxin had increased by another level. He asked, "What other strange tricks does the heartless willow have?" "You'll know when you see." Lu Wuxin is about to use his ultimate move. Be careful, dodge. The inner demons only had time to warn him. Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked over and saw that the heartless willow had changed. Wisps of red smoke were emitted from the willow leaves, and with a gust of wind, they swept towards Tang Zheng. On the ground, wherever the red smoke passed, the flowers and plants withered, and even the rocks and soil turned blood-red. It was extremely frightening. Get out of the way. The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor cried out in shock. They understood Lu Wuxin and her methods quite well, so when they saw this scene, they understood how powerful it was. However, there was still one who didn't manage to dodge in time and was enveloped by the red smoke. He let out a scream and then stopped abruptly. It was as if his throat was being strangled. His flesh and blood dissolved at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a few seconds, he became a skeleton. However, the bones were permeated with a strange red color, which made one's hair stand on end. What is this? Tang Zheng quickly retreated a few steps and stood in front of Yi Dingdang to protect him. Blood willow. The evolved state of the heartless willow. Lu Wuxin said arrogantly. Tang Zheng was shocked, so this was the evolved state of the heartless willow. No wonder its attack power had increased so much, especially the red smoke, which made one's hair stand on end. On the other side, the battle between Yi Dingdang and Yi Meiyu had also entered its climax. Yi Dingdang's cultivation was much weaker, but her perseverance and battle experience were outstanding. She had been in danger several times, and although she had been injured, she did not let Yi Meiyu succeed. On the other hand, Yi Dingdang's few unexpected attacks made Yi Meiyu quite angry, and she almost got hit. What Yi Dingdang used was the wind-chasing sword technique. This sword technique was originally extremely exquisite and caught people off guard, causing them to be unable to defend against it. Back then, Yi Xuanji had wanted to imitate the wind-chasing sword technique, but in the end, he was unable to learn the essence of it and ended up becoming a laughingstock. Yi Dingdang, I don't believe that I can't kill you. Yi Meiyu's face was ashen. In the past, when she was not a cultivator, she was always compared to Yi Dingdang. Everyone in the Ye family thought highly of Yi Dingdang, and even disdained her, the eldest miss of the Ye family. On the surface, they were in agreement, but in reality, there were many people who disdained her actions. Yi Meiyu was very clear about this, but there was nothing she could do. She was unrestrained by nature, and was indeed unrestrained. At that time, she did not care about the gazes of these people at all. She did as she pleased, thinking that she was the one with the true personality and that everyone else was just an ordinary person. But now that she thought about it, she finally understood how stupid she was back then. Those people, especially the servants, inadvertently revealed looks of disdain that were like steel needles piercing into her bones. Yi Ding-dang, I will kill you and let those people understand who is stronger between the eldest miss and the second miss of the Ye family, and who is the true expert. Yi Meiyu clenched her teeth and roared crazily. Yi Ding-dang's face was gloomy, he clenched his teeth, his mind couldn't help but recall the Ye family's doll-like appearance, his anger rising. She glared at Yi Meiyu as if her eyes were about to spit fire, and said, Yi Meiyu, you are a madman. For your ambition, you actually turned so many people into puppets. If not for Tang Zheng's help to free them, they would have lived in the dreamland created by the traceless dream spell for the rest of their lives, completely becoming your, Yi Meiyu's, slaves. You are truly too ruthless. Huh, ruthless? That's their honor. What's wrong with living in the dreamland that I created and becoming my slave? What did they do with that old thing Yi Xuanji in the past? Only by following me can they truly start a new life. Yi Meiyu laughed crazily. At least they didn't use the efforts of others. They had their own feelings and lives. Yi Ding-dang retorted. No matter what, she could not forget the empty eyes of those people. Without thoughts, how could a person be called a person? Chapter 1204. You are a madman, there is simply no way to communicate with you. Although I do not recognize myself as a member of the Yi clan, but for the Yi clan to produce someone like you, it is truly the Yi clan's misfortune and shame. You don't even let off your own family, you are simply not human. Yi Ding-dang hysterically roared, she was simply too angry. You don't have the qualifications to judge me, none of you have the qualifications. Yi Meiyu glared angrily and retorted. Yi Ding-dang did not say anything else. She raised her sword and thrusted forward, as fast as lightning, as fast as a storm. She was not afraid of Yi Meiyu. Although she was at a disadvantage, she took the initiative to attack again and again. This made Yi Meiyu especially angry, as if her dignity had been greatly provoked. She was so powerful, but she still could not make Yi Ding-dang feel the slightest bit of reverence. This was a huge failure. Yi Meiyu only had one thought in her mind, and that was to kill Yi Ding-dang. Heart's dream. She growled and spread out her 10 fingers, causing an invisible force to spread out. Yi Ding-dang felt the scene in front of her suddenly change, and she realized that she had arrived at a familiar place, the high school campus. Fang Shishir and Tang Zheng held hands as they strolled around the campus with a sweet and happy expression. They were truly a match made in heaven, causing countless students to stop and cast envious gazes and praises at them. This is a match made in heaven. That Yi Ding-dang is a tomboy, and she still wants to win the favor of Tang Zheng. She's just dreaming. An ear-piercing voice entered Yi Ding-dang's ears, causing her to feel as if she had been struck by lightning. She suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. How could this be? Tang Zheng clearly said that he loves me. Yi Ding-dang muttered to herself as if she was in a dream. She found it hard to believe what she was seeing, but she was already completely immersed in the dream, so she did not know that it was an illusion. Of course, Yi Meiyu could see this scene. Looking at Yi Ding-dang, who was dumbstruck as if she had been struck by lightning, she felt extremely carefree in her heart. Like a victorious general, she laughed sinisterly and said, Yi Ding-dang, do you think I don't know what you are most afraid of losing? All the glory and wealth are not worth mentioning to you. Only this man is your life. Letting you know the face of a man is a fatal blow to you. Yi Ding-dang was trapped in the dream and could not extricate herself. She could almost hear the sound of her heart breaking. Her face was pale and her lips were trembling. She wanted to rush up and question Tang Zheng, but in the end, she did not have the courage. The ear-piercing words of the surrounding crowd were like sharp knives that stabbed into her heart, causing her heart to be riddled with holes. She could barely breathe as she clutched her chest, on the verge of collapse, as if she could fall to the ground at any moment. Suddenly, Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir seemed to have noticed her. They both turned their heads to look at her and gave her a strange smile. This smile contained too many meanings, such as ridicule, disdain, and so on and so forth. In short, this smile was enough to make people feel like they were about to collapse. Yi Dingdang fiercely trembled, her expression fluctuating. Yi Meiyu was extremely carefree. Ever since she was young, she had never felt so carefree. It was as if she had drunk a cup of iced red bayberry juice on a hot summer day. The feeling was indescribable. But suddenly, Yi Meiyu's face froze. She looked at Yi Dingdang in disbelief, thinking, what is she doing? Yi Dingdang laughed. This smile made Yi Meiyu extremely uneasy, because this was supposed to be a heartbroken moment. Why would she laugh? Could it be that she had received too much of a shock and went crazy? How could Yi Dingdang go crazy? Her willpower far exceeded that of an ordinary person. Although she had suffered an unprecedented blow this time and was on the verge of collapsing, when she saw the smile that Tang Zheng and Yi Meiyu revealed to her, her body and mind were greatly shaken, and a kind of absurd feeling assaulted her heart. It was as if a switch had been turned on at the bottom of her heart, illuminating her body and mind, causing her to come to a sudden realization. Dream, all of this is a dream created by Yi Meiyu's heart dream. Yi Dingdang muttered to herself. She had already seen through the mystery. She had actually used her own strength to break through the shackles of the heart dream. Although the heart's dream was powerful, it had a huge flaw, and that was that it had to be as close to reality as possible. Otherwise, if it was too outrageous, or if it deviated from the knowledge of the person who entered the dream, everything would collapse. This was like a skyscraper. Without the support of a foundation, everything was like a pavilion in the air. It was extremely illusory. Yi Dingdang had discovered something that did not conform to reality, and her heart had received a great shock. Only then did she see through the mystery and wake up from the dream. Tang Zheng might have fallen in love with someone else, and Fang Shishir might have been together with Tang Zheng, causing others to be envious of them. However, the two of them would definitely not show that kind of mocking and disgust towards Yi Dingdang. This understanding was deeply rooted in Yi Dingdang's bones, so when she saw that gaze, she understood that everything was fake. This was a foundation of trust and deep feelings, and was not something an ordinary person could do. Yi Dingdang was carefree and did not care about trifles. In fact, her meticulous thoughts were no different from other girls. Yi Meiyu had overlooked this point, and had also underestimated the relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. She had added fuel to the fire, and in order to completely destroy Yi Dingdang's body and mind, she did not know that she had overreached herself, and had instead allowed Yi Dingdang to escape. When Yi Meiyu heard Yi Dingdang's words, her eyes almost popped out of their sockets, as if she had seen a ghost. She hysterically roared, "Impossible, how could she see through the heart's dream technique with her little strength? This is simply impossible." Yi Meiyu kept shouting, but she was unable to change the situation. Even in her dreams, she could not think of the reason for her failure. How could she be the same as Tang Zheng? How could she easily escape from the heart's dream technique? Could it be that what Nightmare said was false, and was just bragging? Yi Meiyu's confidence was shaken. However, when she thought of the scene where the entire Ye family was immersed in the dream and was captivated by her, her confidence returned to her body. She took a deep breath and said, "No, this is just an individual phenomenon. The heart's dream is indeed a very powerful spell. But what was the use of that? If this spell could not deal with the enemy he hated the most, then it would be extremely useless." She simply could not imagine that the reason why the heart's dream technique was ineffective against Yi Dingdang was because of her own fault. She was too anxious and did not understand the enemy, which led to this situation. Yi Dingdang had already completely retreated from the dream. The scene in front of her changed and she returned to the peak of the mountain. The biting cold mountain wind made her mind even clearer. She glared hatefully at Yi Meiyu and said, "Yi Meiyu, you are too cunning. You actually used this kind of dream to scare me, but your scheme still failed. Yi Dingdang, even without a dream, I can still kill you." Yi Meiyu roared, but she did not seem to have any confidence as she rushed towards Yi Dingdang. After Yi Dingdang broke through the traceless dream technique, her confidence was greatly boosted. Her wind-chasing sword technique's attainments had once again risen to another level. On the contrary, Yi Meiyu was flustered and did not have any ideas. The originally disparity in strength between the two sides was actually difficult to determine the victor. Tang Zheng saw this scene, but he was too busy to do anything. Seeing Yi Dingdang escape from the dream, he could not help but secretly cheer and heave a sigh of relief. The power of the blood willow gradually appeared, causing Tang Zheng to fall into a predicament and be surrounded by danger. Tang Zheng, don't make any unnecessary resistance. Your sun-shooting arrow has already been trapped by my heartless willow, what else can you do? Any creature would not be able to survive in this red smoke and would turn into a pile of bones. You can be proud. Back then, who knows how many heroes and tyrants died under the blood willow. It is your honor to be able to receive the same treatment as them. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly, and said, fuck your honor. You said that no creature would be able to survive in this red smoke. Hee, that reminded me. Lu Wuxin said disdainfully, so what if I remind you? What can you do? For symbols venerable, come out. Tang Zheng roared, and with a loud bang, the entire mountain seemed to tremble violently. A huge creature appeared out of thin air and stood in front of everyone. It's the four symbols venerable again. Lu Wuxin's eyes shone with hatred, you're in cahoots with Qiyu. Back then, the four symbols venerable killed many of our Yellow Emperor tribe's warriors. Today, I will take revenge for them. The four symbols venerable had participated in countless wars with the Yellow Emperor tribe, and had outstanding battle achievements. Back then, no one would have ignored the existence of the four symbols venerable. In addition, the last time in the Heavenly Mountain, the four symbols venerable had also helped Tang Zheng, so this group of old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor naturally hated Qiyu to the bone. Hee, that depends on whether you have the ability or not. Tang Zheng disdainfully retreated, using his hand as a sword, he forced Yi Meiyu back, picked up Yi Dingdang, and flew up to the four symbols venerable, then disappeared into his chest, safely entering the core of the four symbols venerable. Come back. Yi Meiyu fiercely stomped her feet, but she was unable to catch up. Four symbols venerable, destroy them. Tang Zheng gave the order. The four symbols venerable did not say anything, and strode towards Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin knew how powerful the four symbols venerable was. The blood willow was useful against living beings, but the four symbols venerable was a magical treasure in the end, not a living being. The blood willow could not do anything to the four symbols venerable. It was as if Tang Zheng was wearing a treasured robe that was impenetrable by swords and spears, completely fearless. The four symbols venerable rushed into the red smoke as if there was no one around. He grabbed a willow branch, and with a fierce tug, it was forcefully pulled off from the heartless willow. A blood-like liquid flowed down from the heartless willow, spilling all over the ground and fusing with the rocks, which immediately turned blood-red. The venerable of the four symbols pulled off the willow branches binding the shooting sun arrow in just a few moves. The shooting sun arrow regained its freedom and let out a resounding cry, as if it was cheering, but also as if it was shouting in anger. Whoosh whoosh whoosh.